I'm going to show you a video of Keke Palmer during the 2020 George Floyd uprisings. But before I do, pay attention to what happens. Pay attention to what happens around Keke Palmer and why. I'm going to let it play in full.
It was send a huge message. We just march with us. March the whole round with us. March, you and your men, y'all protect us. Protect us. Y'all march with us. March around like we just did. Do that march with us. Y'all stand beside us. No, you don't, because you the protector. So if you can't patrol yourself. If it's you that's supposed to be patrolling us, then walk with us.
I'm also protecting some of these businesses.
Okay. Okay.
Can you do me a favor? Can you do me a favor? Can you take a kneel? Can you take a kneel?
I don't know. They ain't enough for me.
They
ain't enough for me.
Thank you.
They ain't enough for me.
Let me see you take a kneel. Thank you.
Let's all do it together. Come on. Everybody, let's all do it together. You get good for it, take a kneel. Let's all do it together.
Oh, y'all in the back, take a knee. Take a knee.
You standing up, we taking you with it. Come on, take
So before I get into what is now a historical analysis of that event 4 years after the fact, I just want to simply make some observations. Number one, a request was made. Number two, everyone's phones were out. Number three, a diversion was made. Number four, the request was left unanswered. Number five, a diversion was made. Number six, the protest was drowned out by a distraction. And number seven, the entire crowd was disarmed and pacified within 35 seconds. Why am I bringing this up? Why am I analyzing this event with those 7 key observations? Here's the reason. So I noticed y'all are always talking about liberalism on this app, just arguing about it back and forth about how much you hate it. And one thing I think every one of these videos is missing is an example of how it operates. What happened in that video is a real-time in 4K example of how liberalism affects a revolution. I'm going to spend the rest of this video going through each of the 7 observations and why it's really, really important that we notice this. Number one, a request was made. That request was revolutionary. She literally asked of the soldiers to defend them, use their guns. She didn't say the use their guns part, but that's what she implied, or at least that's what I'm going to operate on for the analysis, that she was implying that. Now, if you want to argue that Keke Palmer's politics today and how she doesn't talk about Palestine matters, bring it up. I mean, I think that's a good point, but I think for the purposes of analyzing this video, she was making a revolutionary request. Number two, everyone's phones were out. What I think we need to understand is that, especially when we're talking about liberalism, that this event was a spectacle and liberalism is a performance. The people that participate in the systems of our oppression know this. The regular citizens, the people who were a part of the protest know this, and that's why they were holding their phones up. And so did the person who caused the distraction. And that gets me to number three, a diversion was made. This person specifically requested, changed the whole conversation and requested for these soldiers to get on their knees. Instead of protecting us with your power, your authority, your privilege, whatever, we want you to get on your knee and kneel. That completely changed the entire interaction. And I want to bring up that part about it being a spectacle, that was intentional. This was all captured and recorded. And we have to understand liberalism is always performative, and they set the stage. These phones we use set the stage for liberalism to operate and spread like propaganda. Number four, a request was left unanswered. Because of the diversion, we never got an answer. The soldiers never said yes or no. And because of that, they have the plausible deniability of participating in this. And that's really key. Again, this is a spectacle. They know they're being watched, so they know what they can and cannot say. But the effect of this entire distraction is that they never answered. They never needed to. Number 5, a protest to the diversion was made. Keke Palmer said that ain't enough. And I know that's fucking right, because it's not a fucking enough. And she immediately clocked it. What the hell? Saying get on your knees to do a kneel during this time? Like it's an actual uprising. We have to remember what was really happening 4 years ago. During an uprising, you gonna say get on your knee and kneel? That's crazy. And I don't mean that in an ableist way, but what the fuck? Now, see, Keke better than me, because I'd have crashed out. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you talking about, a kneel? And back on subject, when she decided to protest and say that ain't enough, no one else could hear it. And that brings me to number 6, is that the protest was drowned out by the distraction. And an effect of liberalism is that it distracts not only people from getting on the issue at hand, which is our protection and our livelihood, but for the people that do clock it as a distraction, their cries are not heard. They literally get drowned out by the nonsense and bullshit of liberalism. And the final point is that in the entire interaction, it only took 35 seconds for the crowd to be completely disarmed and pacified. The ideology and performance of liberalism, the performance of this symbolism of care, this symbolism of revolution, this symbolism of any kind of change to our material circumstances, a kneel, it completely changes everything, and it makes people not want to fight. In fact, it gets them on their fucking knees. And that's literally what happened. That is what happened 4 years ago. And reminder, this was an uprising. That never happened ever in human history, in American history of that magnitude. Millions of people were outside really fighting. Like y'all, that really happened. And the reason it stopped, the reason it was cut fucking short is because of liberalism. And that's an example of it. That entire video is a clear, caught in fucking 4K example of how liberalism operates. I need us not to be like the girl who shouted that out, because the thing is, no, I don't think she was in the CIA. No, I don't think she was planning it. I think she's just one of y'all regular ass people out here who are fucking unfortunately co-opted by liberalism. Y'all think that shit matters. You think the performance of care matters and not the actual use of power to protect us and change our material circumstances and change our oppressive circumstances. Because what Keke Palmer did, what she was willing to do, and mind you, she led with love with it too. Because a lot of y'all wouldn't do it like her. Y'all wouldn't lead with love, but she did so and asked for direct use of power to protect us. That's what we need. And when we let liberalism distract us from the things that we need and instead search for symbols of our freedom and liberation, we lose. In 35 seconds, mind you.
Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, JamesBFauntleroy. So good to see all of you here. Thank you for staying with me for that entire cold open. The Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you guys can find me there on Sundays, typically for the JB Show and the Savvy and JB Show, and here typically on my channel on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I wanted to play that cold open because I want you guys to keep that as an overarching theme in mind as we have our conversation, because right now what we're seeing, especially with the influx of people like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and a whole host of other, corporate dictator lackeys, is that you're going to see a lot of performances happening, but are you really going to see anything substantive for those of us who are regular citizens? So with that being said, just to let you guys know, if you guys have not already, then please go ahead and give the stream a like. That helps me out with the algorithm. Thank you so very much. Also, if you like to, you can subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. It gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. And if you would like to have me react to any videos, or if you just want a video response, you can request it through QBounty at qbounty.com/JBFaunt. So thank you very much there. Now, I'm going to say a blanket hello to everybody that's watching, because I just want to say hello to all of you that are watching. And yes, I am dual streaming, not just on my channel, but also on RBN. Thank you very much to my comrades in RBN for giving the green light for me to be able to do this. I think this is a very important topic, especially with those of us being post-duopoly, and we want this information to get as disseminated out there as possible. And also shout out to anybody that's watching on Rumble and Twitter. Sorry. Thank you very much. So with that being said, what are we talking about? So let's go into the thumbnail. Democrats are ops. I want people to realize what we're really saying here. And in the Urban Dictionary, an op is particularly reserved for either your opposite or somebody that's doing like a psyop, a psychological operation, or something to fool you into thinking that they're really on your side when in reality they're on the side of the opposition. And with that being said, I would like to bring in my guest, Professor Anthony Zenkus, who is not a stranger to this channel. And I just want to say thank you very much for returning. I would like to get your thoughts first about the video and the cold open that I showed, and what do you think about it?
Yeah. Hey, it's great to be here. Great to be here, JB, and thanks for asking me. And you continue to, and the rest of the crew at RBN, to do such important work. So thank you for doing it. I know it takes a lot of effort to put out a podcast on a regular basis, which is why I don't put a podcast out on a regular basis. I'd rather just be on yours. But these conversations are so important. You know, I think it's interesting. I saw that a while back and forgot about it. It is more relevant today than ever, right? And so, you know, I thanks for playing it and reminding me. It reminds. So one of the things that I think was really, and he got to it at the end, was really salient, was that it was a protester that said, "Will you take a knee?" So, and I think that he went through great pains to say, like, I'm not saying she was an op. I want to dig a little deeper into what the process was of her asking the cop to take a knee. Because what was originally requested of the police was, will you march with us and protect us? Your job is ostensibly is to protect and serve. We are the people you are supposed to protect and serve. Will you? And it was a radical revolutionary request. Shouldn't have been, but it was. And the cops didn't want to answer. And you saw him say things like, well, I'm here. And look, this cop was behaving nicely, right? He seemed to be respectful at the moment we saw him on the camera. And he goes, look, I'm here. He goes, I'm protecting the businesses. I am protecting, right? He didn't want to answer. Will you march and walk and protect us, right? Without letting the tension of that moment build up so that the cops had to answer, somebody blurts out, will you take a knee? And what is happening right there is, this is the result of always being told our needs are never going to be met. Our goals are too lofty. You are dreaming too big. You are standing too tall. You need to shrink yourself. You need to be less than. Ask for a crumb. And I don't want to diminish the idea of taking the knee when Colin Kaepernick did it. It was a big statement, right? Colin Kaepernick's, I mean, if you read his book that came out after, I mean, his goal wasn't to make taking a knee a religion. He did it to get a conversation going, right? It wasn't like, oh, everybody keep taking knees. That's not what we need to do. We need to transform a fundamentally unjust system. In that case, it was a system of racist policing, reinforcing white privilege violently. Okay? He wanted to transform it. He took the knee in order to bring a conversation on that very topic. We don't need to keep taking the knees. Once he did it, we had the conversation, which was his goal. His knee wasn't the goal. And then why would a protester do this? Because we, and I'm including myself in the mix, we are so acculturated. And I'm not likening myself to a non-white person in America. I'm just talking about the broader issue of like redressing our government, making demands, and getting ignored. But we're so used to our demands being ignored or diminished. She asked for the little crumb. Show us where, I feel like that person was saying, show us that we're human. Show us we matter. Begging instead of being strong. And I don't blame them. I get that whole feeling of sometimes you just got to accept just a little bit. It reminds me, and I think it is a good metaphor for liberalism, and it is that idea of Plato's allegory of the cave, right? So you got these people, they spend their entire existence, for those that don't remember, I don't know, what was it like, freshman year college lit, or those that never read it or didn't go. It was these people spend their existences chained to walls in a cave, so they cannot see outside the cave, but the entrance is open. And when it's light out, all they see is the shadows on the wall of being cast by the animals, the trees, the things going by. They don't ever see reality. They just see these ever-changing representations of reality. And based on that, they try to make sense of what is the world out there. That's liberalism. Liberalism is casting the shadows on the wall, never giving the reality of true transformative justice. In fact, doing everything it can to prevent that. Liberals don't want us chained to the walls in the cave to be liberated and to walk outside and see reality for what it truly is and then transform it, because they would lose their position, right? So it is that whole idea of we're getting these symbols, we're getting the kneeling with kente cloths, we're getting Democrats storming the Department of Education, really angry, and then being told, well, you can't come in, and walking away. It's like, well, first of all, what do you think was going to happen, right? Of course you were going to be told that. You either don't go or go in there and try to get in and listen, non-violently, walk in, disobey, commit civil disobedience, get arrested if that's your goal. But don't do that. We stormed the DOE. No, you didn't storm the DOE, right? And by the way, to non-violently occupy space is okay to do, right? That's not violence. So they had the performative thing at the DOE. That's just a shadow on the wall. They had the kneeling in kente cloths. That's the shadow on the wall. They had AOC crying at a detention facility in, I think, Texas, when Trump was keeping these kids, torturing these kids in cages. Those are shadows on the wall. And we need to open the eyes, move the chains, get out of the cave, and see what is reality and then transform it. You cannot transform reality if you don't see it. And the liberals' goal, and I'm not saying every person who, believes Democrats are the best alternative to Republicans thinks this way. People basically eat what's on the menu. A lot of them haven't had. I'm saying there's people all along the spectrum of understanding what's going on, but there are those in the liberal circles who they surely know exactly what they're doing.
Yes.
And what they're doing is they're distracting us because, in the Plato allegory of the cave, the whole thing, the shadows constantly change. So the people never get a sense of what is going on out there. We don't know that. Those are the distractions. So, it's a great way for them to be in a position to say, look, we're doing something when they're really not. Distract us with those little dancing shadows on the wall, and nothing ever changes. Because when that keeps happening, the people, and I'm sorry, this is a long-winded answer, the people in the cave remain chained to the cave wall, right? Nothing shifts, nothing changes, just distractions on the screen.
Exactly. I want to address this as well, because I think just to let you know that we're not Democrats on RBN, or I'm not a Democrat on my channel, but this person says, from DWS says, you didn't seem to mind to kneel on the NFL though. Here's the thing about what Colin Kaepernick did. You have a person that is an athlete, semi-celebrity on a team that decided to use his voice in order to direct attention to police violence. He has no institutional power in order to change this country. So therefore, his performance was really a notification. It was like the fade in the water, right? That guy who, beat up those people, I think it was in Alabama or Mississippi, who got into a fight with all those people. It was him taking his hat and throwing it up in the air, and it's basically a cuckoo to all the black people to come in and, handle business. So that's what Colin Kaepernick basically did. It's like, no, we need to bring attention to this and handle business. The difference with the Democratic Party is they have institutional power. So when Democrats go, oh man, somebody needs to do something about this, and they're literally in Congress, or they're literally in the White House, or they're literally governors, or they're literally mayors, and they have the institutional power. But then they say somebody should do something about this.
Right.
That's the equivalent of your child being in a store, ripping stuff off the shelves, and you're the parent, and you go, somebody should do something about that kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. You're the person in charge. You're the person who we put there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to people like Colin Kaepernick, he does performances all day.
Right.
And of course, he directed something as a performance, but to the detriment of his own career. Right? But now we're talking to people who actually can let the rubber meet the road, but they don't even put the tire down. So that's the thing. So I just wanted to address that really quick.
I think the explanation was very valuable for your listeners, but I want to address DWS's question. DWS, did you not listen to a word I said? I literally explained clearly the difference between Colin Kaepernick taking the knee and asking the cops to take the knee, or Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer taking a knee in kente cloth. I specifically, so when you're done watching this live stream, go rewind it and listen to what I said. But for, a little louder for those in the back, Colin Kaepernick's taking the knee was a symbolic gesture to begin a conversation that was necessary, that Kaepernick put himself out there and said, we need to have this conversation. His intention wasn't to create a religion where people take knees and think that's racial justice. He was sending a signal. That's the explanation. We're going to move on.
Yeah. And just to address this is a positive one. This is why I have Professor Zenkus on.
Oh, no.
Thank you so very much, Cristiano.
Oh, Christina.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss is that there seems to be some infighting within the Democratic Party, especially as of late. And I want to get into this article out of the Hill, because this is actually really just showing that the Democratic Party really continues to play in the face of, wrong one. They really continue to play in the face of those of us who really not only desire change, but we need it fundamentally.
Right.
So let's go here. So this is out of the Hill. And that. So here's the title says Schumer at the center of civil war after funding fiasco. So this came out really early this morning. And it says Democrats on Capitol Hill are waging an internal war against one of their own after the GOP successfully muscled through the Senate partisan spending bill that drew votes of Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and 8 other Democrats and an independent. The clash is pitting most of the party, including virtually every House Democrat, against Schumer, who infuriated members of his party on and off Capitol Hill by saying Thursday night he would back the measure. The differences over strategy badly split House and Senate Democrats. House Democrats engaged in active pressure campaign to convince Senate Democrats to vote against the bill. Before and after Schumer's announcement, a number of prospective Democratic presidential candidates, including Governor Gavin Newsom of California and J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, also urged Democrats to oppose the bill. The official shattered the message of unity that Democrats were hoping to convey coming out of their annual strategy retreat this week. It also eroded confidence within the party that Schumer will hold the line to block Republicans' agenda, and there's legislative fights to come, especially after a dozen of House Democrats in tough districts voted against this measure Tuesday. I thought, and maybe I'm just wrong, but I thought that Donald Trump was a fascist.
He's Hitler. He's Hitler. He's a monster. He's the worst thing ever in the world. And let's sit down and see how we can work with it. And here's the thing. Democrats, like Republicans, hire very well-paid consultants, but it is my impression that the Democrat machine puts a lot more credence in what these consultants say. And the consultants, let's separate that from the pollsters. The pollsters clearly told them when Kamala started running that, in July, end of June, beginning of July, when that happened, her economic populist messages were resonating well. She was in the lead, right? And then, all of a sudden, when Tony West, her brother-in-law, who's an executive at Uber, Uber exploits their employees. They're anti-labor. They exploit with their workers. When he got his clause in the campaign and basically said, listen, no, we got to shift away from that. The donors we don't want to scare them away. That whole thing shifted, right? And the consultants then took over and were like, here's the message we're going to put out. So there's this whole thing with liberalism where they then decided our message is going to be Trump is the monster. Because when you did the economic populism, you had people saying, good, we agree, kitchen table issues. They switched to Trump is the monster. And guess what? Didn't resonate. She lost. She lost the campaign. Obviously, that was the wrong tactic. I don't like Trump. You don't like Trump. This is nothing new. We don't need, online, we don't spend a ton of time talking about how bad he is. I guess, we call out the policies we disagree with, but, the hyperbole they engaged in now ends up making them look like fools. Because instead of economic populism, you didn't want to show, you stopped wanting to show people what you were going to do for them because they had no plan to do anything for them. In fact, it could be argued that Harris, not that Joe Biden was a populist, but that Harris's campaign was less economic populist than Joe Biden. Even with like the capital gains tax, Joe Biden wanted to raise it more than she did. Not that he was any kind of great champion of the working class, but she was worse, right? So they doubled down on the Trump is a Nazi, and they even went out with that, like, oh, he said Trump is a Nazi, and he said Trump, and the American people didn't give a shit. They didn't. They just tuned it out. They've been hearing it since 2016. They just tuned it. What are you going to do? Like, it's tuned out. So they doubled down on it. Now you got Schumer backing down to the Republicans. He didn't need to. He didn't even try to put up a fight. And that's what I mean about the shadows on the wall. The press was hoping for something because they like turmoil and chaos. Makes them like, oh, we can report this breaking news. They didn't even get a real fight. It was just smoke and mirrors, getting the hopes up. I mean, these people proudly wear the moniker of the resistance. How are they resisting? They're not doing anything. There's no resistance. What?
They're holding up paddles, though.
They're holding up paddles. Yeah. And by the way, like, of that crew, I really do have out of all of them, I have the most respect for Rashida Tlaib. I don't, that doesn't mean like I'm a champion for her, but she has stuck her neck out and talked about issues in ways others haven't. But still, then what? What are you? I'm getting over whatever this seasonal craziness that everybody had around where I'm in New York was recently. But what are you willing to do? Where's the resistance? There's no resistance. So now, it's kind of like everything falls into place. Because remember, once Trump was inaugurated, Mika and I think you guys talked about this, right? Mika and Joe from Morning Joe went down and kissed the ring in Mar-a-Lago, right? Because there they got what Schumer just did. It's just another extension. By the way, Schumer and Trump are friends, They're New York guys. They go way back. They may not be best buds, but they respect each other. And they like each other. And I think Trump donated to Schumer. I'm pretty sure. Schumer's been in, before he was senator, he was in Congress. And before that, I can't remember if he was city council or state assembly. There was one of the others, but he's been in New York politics forever. They've known each other since at least the mid-'80s. Right? So Schumer, listen, your Dem leadership isn't going to change. I just saw a post today from, that Mueller She Wrote account. You froze.
Probably. I don't recognize the name. I'm sorry.
When it's about the Mueller report, instead of Murder She Wrote, Mueller She Wrote. Mueller She Wrote, I think I quoted them. Yeah. Mueller. So first of all, it's a big establishment liberal account. They have 700,000 followers on the app, on the X app. They wrote, "My 2 cents. We don't abandon the Democratic Party. We remake it. It's a good party. It just has bad leadership. He's not a bad dog. He just needs a little love." So I wrote, "How cute. Now they're going with the Dems can still be reformed. Gotta love them for trying." Listen, this is the resistance, folks. The good thing is there's a bunch of people who are actually pretty pissed. There's a bunch of liberals who are actually pretty pissed because these are people that I know who do believe in racial justice. They do believe in these things. They believe in Medicare for all. They want the wars to end. I know these people. Their only difference with me is they believe that can happen within the Democratic Party if we just give it time and make the push. Well, all of a sudden, they're getting pissed, and I love to see it because that's it happened to all of us, right? I wasn't born like enlightened, like, oh, I'm a leftist. I voted for Democrats my whole life. I worked for the local Democratic town committee here, the club on Long Island where I grew up. I knocked on doors, walked around the neighborhoods, made phone calls, went to fundraisers. I tried to get people. I worked on campaigns for state assembly, state senate, oh my God, county legislator, town council, all Democrats. I get it. Over time, I had my evolution, right? And I'm still hopeful others will. And so maybe this is a good thing. Hey, by the way, folks, if you're still on the fence, this is who Chuck Schumer is. He's an institutionalist. He wants the wheels of government to keep going. So He's not going to do anything to upset the apple cart. Don't look to him for, and we told you this. He shouldn't be leader. Pelosi shouldn't be leader of the House. Hakeem Jeffries, her hand-picked protege, shouldn't be running being the minority leader in the House right now. He should not be. We told you this for years. We're not changing our message. Yeah. These people, they're not even frauds though, right, JB? Like, it's not like they're frauds. This is just who they are. Their kids party together in the Hamptons. Trump's, Pelosi's, Schumer, they all hang out. They're friends.
Yeah. I mean, even their kids are friends.
Right, yeah. Chelsea's like best friend still with Ivanka, Chelsea Clinton. That never changed. I mean, they have something in common. Money and power. That's the club they're in.
Yeah. Including possibly some blonde hair with dark roots. But see, beyond that.
Listen, don't put... All right, we'll talk about it another time.
I'm just talking. Hey, I'm just saying, box bleach and box dye. I mean, these are the parties that cut their own bangs. I'm just going to put it that way.
You're hysterical.
But let me share this as well. So this is what Kyle Kalinske said. I'm not going to pick on Kyle, but I think that this is misguided on his part. He says, call Chuck Schumer's Senate office and tell him to resign for his pathetic caving to MAGA robber barons and fascists, and he gives the number. And this is coming from somebody who is deeply still committed to the reformation of a party that honestly is fundamentally against actually working for the people. You're asking someone who plays a doctor on TV to do an appendectomy on an actual living human being.
Ooh.
That's what it is.
Yes.
And so this is why I say we got to leave both parties. What did I say? And now liberals are in a tizzy over what I said because now they're all up in my comments. I said, no, don't call. And I'm like, put the phone down. There's something easier you can do. Leave the Democratic Party. They are co-conspirators with the Republicans. Kyle thinks that call your congressman bullshit will work in this late stage of capitalism. My sweet summer child. This is the thing. A lot of times they will act like, well, you can still change it. And then I'm sitting here going, in 2008, Barack Obama said that he was going to codify Roe v. Wade into law as soon as he got into office. And in 2009, he said, well, that's not my highest legislative priority.
Yep.
It was also Barack Obama who wanted to cut Social Security, but then he was challenged by Bernie Sanders, and so therefore he backed off. He wanted to cut Social Security just like Joe Biden did.
Oh, God. Actually, Joe Biden wanted to do it even more. He was like salivating over it. Obama just thought it was a good idea, but he did try. He did try with the grand bargain with Republicans. That was, Obama's hope was to come out and say, I think he wanted to be seen, and he is by me, as a figure who was able to work with Republicans. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not a good thing. As far as the Republican Party as it existed, he didn't expect all the pushback. He thought he could do his grand bargain and say, look, he wanted to be Clinton 2.0. So what did Clinton 2.0 do? And this is the triangulation of Clinton. By the way, if you folks are in the moment and you're like, Trump is horrible, we agree. Except for Ukraine. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I hope there will be peace in Ukraine. That is my hope. And I don't care who brings it. And if Trump does it, thank you. Good. I would like fewer people to die. And I would like there to be peace. I don't see that as anything bad. But, they can't stand Trump. So they think liberalism is defined in what is the fight against quote unquote Trump today. And look at your history. Bill Clinton in 1992 wins the presidency. By the smallest, he did not get a majority. He got a plurality, but I mean a low one too. It was like 40-something%. It wasn't high. It wasn't like 49%, because I don't think Trump got a majority here either. He got a plurality. But point is, Clinton takes office at 93 and says, I'm going to be a different kind of Democrat, and proceeds to dismantle welfare as we know it, to deregulate Wall Street, two of the most destructive things that affected working class Americans since then. For the past 30 years, we've been dealing with the fallout. Obama wanted to be that 2.0, because who wanted to get rid of welfare as we know it? The Republicans. Clinton is like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be remembered. Obama, who wants to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid? The Republicans. I'm going to do it as part of a grand bargain, and we'll get some good things out of it. But ultimately, he didn't get to do it then. Remember, so when you look at what liberalism is, and it's gotten worse, it's been historically a vehicle to get some of the worst parts of conservatism, right-wing republicanism through. So Ronald Reagan and George Bush the First were never able to get the free trade agreement. Clinton did, and that decimated the working class of the United States. Clinton, the quote-unquote liberal, he really wasn't, but okay, in many aspects he was. Liberalism is the vehicle that the right wing uses to get its worst shit through. So Reagan couldn't completely get rid of welfare. It was called welfare at the time, by the way. Now it's TANF, aid to families with dependent children, became temporary assistance to needy families, and it became block granted and time limited. Really a disaster. The Republicans couldn't do it. The Democrat got it through. The Republicans could not gut Wall Street regulation. The Democrat got it through. And so this is what's been happening now for 30 plus years. And people need to study the purpose of liberalism. And I'll throw this out. And that is, the purpose of liberalism isn't to make life better. It's to be that stopgap on true leftist, transformational, working class centered transformational change. It's to stop it and to allow the worst excesses of neoliberalism, which is just market-based capitalism. Market is primary. To allow that to roll over on everything else. And if I could just go on with one other thing, Obama said he would sign card check on day one too, right? And that was supposed to make it easier for people to unionize. He had 8 years. He never did it. And neither did Biden in 4. They are not pro-labor.
Yeah. And just to add to your point, Biden in his first 2 years, between 2008 and 2010, he had the presidency, he had a supermajority in the Senate that was filibuster proof, and he had a majority in the House as well.
No, that was Obama had the supermajority.
Yeah, Obama. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Maybe you did say Obama, and I'm hearing stuff.
No, it's okay. Biden. But Obama had 2 years to do he could have went carte blanche, and just did everything for the working class.
Yeah.
Instead, but he didn't do it. I just wanted to add a point.
Well, Obama had a supermajority, and I think they looked at it. It was like for 72 days or something, 72 working days. You could get a lot done in that. You could have codified Roe v. Wade. Even the things that they say they stand for, which they could have done and didn't do, that wouldn't directly affect working class materially, like background checks at gun shows, they could have done that easily. They could have. These are issues they say they care about. They could have extended the assault weapons ban. They didn't. So what did they do? And I concern myself more with the material issues. I'm just saying those are things they said they cared about. They did not increase the minimum wage. The last time the minimum wage was increased was under George W. Bush. He signed legislation which was a two-phase increase in the minimum wage. Phase 2 took place in 2009 when Obama was president. But Obama did not sign the increase of the minimum wage. Bush had signed it, and that was to $7.25 an hour federally. And they could have raised it. I mean, what might they have raised it to then? Like maybe they would have talked about, I think Obama said something like 10, but advocates were pushing for 12. And then midway through the 2010s, that's when we demanded 15. We demanded 15 10 years ago in 2015. I remember the fight for 15. It was 2015, 2014 and 15, actually. It was 11 years ago. Let's get rid of that number, right? It's not relevant anymore. But Obama could have done all of these things. The first 100 days of FDR, he did a lot. I mean, arguably the most effective liberal, because the New Deal was liberalism, but it actually saved lives. And there's a reason these programs like Social Security are still popular today. If I'm going to have to have a liberal in office, let it be FDR. Let it be someone who puts in a minimum wage, the Social Security, and does actually transfer. He put people to work. He said government needs to create jobs, and they did. Right? You get Democrats today bragging about cutting jobs, bragging about cutting departments. Obama did. Clinton did. So what is liberalism? But liberalism's purpose is to make the austerity-based capitalist class, to make them feel safer by giving a few crumbs and giving the illusion of hope to the working class. And also highlighting how bad the other side is. And then being able to say, like, look at this. We didn't cause this chaos. So here's my thing. I just saw a friend of mine. We haven't talked in a while. But she's like a prominent person in entertainment. And she said something. And she's funny. She's like a comedy person. And said something like, Trump just did another terrible thing. Can we just agree that every day at 5 o'clock we will open our windows and scream? And I thought it was funny. My only problem with it, why weren't you screaming out your windows when the genocide was going on under Democrats for 15 months? And if you don't like that word genocide, okay, like when they were blowing up babies, when they were shooting people, families scrambling to an aid truck to get food because there was no food. And with our bombs and bullets, we flattened those people as they went. It was that's got to be like lots of bad things happened during Biden and Harris's tenure in the Middle East, in Gaza. But that one sticks out. The video of these people scrambling for an aid truck, and they were set up and they shot them like fish in a kettle. You should have been tweeting then, why aren't we screaming out the window every day at 5 o'clock? And I'm not trying to be morally superior here, but that shit is bad too. It's been bad. Trump is the chaos. And there's a long list of things he's doing that, of course, I oppose. And I've been talking about it. But shit's been bad for a while.
Well, my question to people, especially liberals, is how can you oppose fascism with the Trump administration, but you accept the fascism that was greenlit during the Biden administration when it came to the bombings of people in Gaza, right? Like,
and
how
Lebanon
to be okay with one side, one version of fascism, but the other version of fascism, you're like, well,
they didn't call it fascism. And then they throw their hands up and they say, well, there's not much we can do. And so what you look at is, remember too, Lebanon, Biden administration, the Biden-Harris, let's always attach our name to it. The Biden-Harris administration greenlit Israel's incursion into southern Lebanon, which further destabilized the region, right? And it surely destabilized the people living in that part of Israel. They had to all move because, of course, they were getting attacked by Hezbollah, who was firing rockets back. I mean, that was bound to happen. And so those people had to be uprooted. It didn't make their lives more stable. So if one is concerned about that, you would be thinking this is bad. That happened under Biden. All of it happened under Biden and Harris, this slaughter and destabilization. And they wanted it to go away. Their only argument, if you remember online, for the longest time was, well, Trump is going to be worse. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's bad right now. And by the way, things aren't good in Gaza. They're being starved. Electricity has been cut off. It is a humanitarian crisis that is of epic proportions, and it's being done on purpose. It's purposefully done. It's not like there was an earthquake. It's like this is being done by the right-wing government of Israel toward the people of Gaza and the West Bank. But it's been going on. And we know this. It's been going on for decades there. Mm-hmm. So what is this process like that we keep getting like, well, they have lost their footing. And here's the thing, and I wonder what you think about this. What is the Democrats' message? You know, it can't be opposing Trump because Schumer just caved. What is their message? I know what I wish it would be. We will give you universal health care. We will give you a $25 federal minimum wage. It should be higher in certain states like New York. We will give you guaranteed federal housing. I would like the federal government to take over the manufacture of generic drugs because there's a generic drug shortage and give them out to people free. You campaigning on. What is their thing? Do you know? I don't know.
The thing is when you have a good cop, bad cop situation, the good cop will bring you in some soda. They may bring you in some bags of chips. They'll treat you real nice because they want the same thing out of you as the bad cop. But they're going around it instead of going direct. And so with the Democratic Party, it's always, okay, a good example. Every single time they actually have power to enact change, there's always something that gets in the way. There's always something that's sabotaged.
The parliamentarian.
Talking, right? But then when the Republicans have the power, that's when they want to scramble and fight and pretend like they're throwing blows. That's like being in a fight. You and your homie get into a fight with a group of guys, and your homie says they're on your side. Let's get back to back. Let's try to fend them off as much as possible. But every single time you try to give them a blow, your homie gets in the way. Every single time you try to sweep the leg, they fall on the ground. Every single time, one gets behind you and they see it, they don't say behind you. No, they let it happen. Then you start to ask, whose side are you on?
And then your friend says, you see them walking away as you're getting ganged up on. You go, where are you going? And they're like, oh, I'm going to the store to get Band-Aids. You're going to need Band-Aids. Thank you so much. They're helping.
Yeah.
They're getting the Band-Aids.
And this is exactly why people are so fed up with the Democratic Party. Let me share this as well. Here is allegedly the resistance, Hakeem Jeffries, right? Here's what he says when asked the question. The reporter says, is it time for new leadership in the Senate to replace Chuck Schumer? Here's what Hakeem Jeffries says.
Is it time for new leadership in the Senate?
Next question.
What an asshole. Fuck you, Hakeem.
Did you guys hear?
Yeah, next question.
Next question. He didn't want to answer.
Yeah, they're not accountable to anybody, these people. He's horrendous. And by the way, here's the thing, like Hakeem, you're not like as dynamic and engaging as you think you are just because you're younger than, Schumer and Pelosi and that whole generation. You're not an electrifying speaker. Like, listen, dude, I don't know what you're doing there. Nancy Pelosi was far better, and I don't agree with her politics at all, was far better at that job than Hakeem Jeffries, because she had a way of working the press. I mean, he's just terrible out there. He's not good. Your spokesperson is bad, Democrats. The one who's supposed to make everybody feel like he checked the boxes, right? He was younger. He was non-white. Okay. The guy can't even do a press conference. He can't even give an artful answer. Like, even Pelosi, if she did Next Question, she would have made it funny. I would have found that enraging, but he's bad at his job. This is all they have. Let's talk about this. What are the Democrats putting up? This supposedly Hakeem Jeffries is part of the future of that party. Look who they're trying to run for mayor in New York, Andrew Cuomo. And wait till you. Sabby did a really good piece on this with Jamal Green the other night. I don't know if you saw it, and I posted about it. The whole piece about, and Kit was on there too. Yeah, Kit Camello, who related to Camila Cabello. No, they spell it differently. But that what was Green saying? That they're going to run, and I believe this to be the case. I've thought this for a while. They're going to run J.B. Pritzker for president. They're going to get their own billionaire. I want to talk about that in a minute. But this is the future of the Democratic Party. Hakeem Jeffries? Are you kidding me? What? Yeah. He's bad at his job. He's not good. They are so fucked, and they don't know it yet. You know who does know it? Like, every now and then I'll tune into Pod Save America. Hey, these guys are freaking out a little because they're not dumb. They're from Obama world, but they at least know Obama. He engaged people, right? He at least did that part. They don't have anybody that can do that right now. Nobody.
It's like they can't even lie to you correctly. It's like at least if you're gonna lie, at least make it an elaborate lie. Like, making something believable. It's like he just gave up. It's like,
here's the thing. We are talking about all this stuff, and what we're able to do when we do this as a populace is distance ourselves. Those who are in a position of privilege, distance ourselves from the pain that our fellow humans, our sisters, brothers, and others are experiencing, whether it's the pain of folks in Gaza, whether it's the pain of folks in the Sudan, right, or in other parts of the world where people are being hurt, whether it's the pain of folks in Ohio or Baltimore, or as Jordan Sheridan likes to call them, in any of the sacrifice zones across the United States, where they've been sacrificed to neoliberal capitalism, and they are told they just don't matter. We can distance ourselves from the pain of the people of Maui. We haven't heard from them or about them since the fires devastated everything they owned. I don't know where these people are living. I don't know what is happening to the people of North Carolina who were still living in tents. Just as recently as a month ago, I saw somebody reporting from the ground there, because we got our infighting and we distanced ourselves from the pain, and live in New York. And so there's more and more people that you see, that you pass, who look to be homeless, unhoused, underfed. And it's that whole, look, I'm sure I've walked by people too, right? There comes a point when you get that, and we're just all doing it, We're not talking about the human toll of a system designed to elevate the few, keep a bunch of others satisfied and hopeful that they'll do better, and then permanently just take the underclass and forget about it. That's the reality we're living in.
Professor, let me ask you this. Have you ever watched any of the Marvel movies in the last, 10 years or so?
A few of them. Not.
Okay.
I know. I keep wanting to like. That's what I was supposed to do during the pandemic. I was supposed to watch them all in order.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you an example of liberalism. Liberalism is when Thanos is on Gamora's planet and he finally meets Gamora. And he says, "You're quite the fighter, Gamora." He's like, "Come with me. Let me help you." And then he shows her the blade, says, "Perfectly balanced as all things should be." And then when they shoot at half the population, Gamora tries to turn her head, but he turns her head back to the blade instead to focus on keeping the balance. This is what liberalism is. Liberalism is a purposeful, desensitizing tool to the suffering of fellow Americans, because it's like, well, you need to just self-care and keep yourself comfortable. Don't bother looking at the homeless people that are out in the streets. Don't bother looking at the migrants that are trying to come here because of the destabilization of what our country's doing. Don't bother to look at the Black people that are getting their heads bashed in by police and multiple cop cities that are being built right now in this country. Don't bother to look at the murder of many trans, especially Black trans people that are constantly trying to survive within this system. Don't look at the poor white people in Appalachia that are suffering from opioid epidemics that were caused by the Sackler family. Don't look. Just look straight forward, keep tunnel vision on you and you alone, and let's do that thing called individualism. I'm doing well. I'm doing okay. I'm in my cushy chair. And this is exactly what it is. It's like Thanos turning the cheek of Gamora and saying, "Don't look at the suffering of other people." That's what it is. And the thing is, like, every single time we try to go, look, they go, shut up.
Yes. That's what happened. That's what happened with Gaza and the liberals. They just want, it was an inconvenient truth they did not want us to talk about because they knew their candidate, both of their candidates, right? Both Biden initially and then Kamala when she refused to change course on Gaza. Both of their candidates were deeply flawed and complicit and participating in the slaughter in Gaza. So the only solution was to not look. Our solution was, look, if you're going to run a Democrat, demand a better Democrat. Demand somebody who is going to vow to change this and be against it. We would have at least been happy if that's what was going on. A bunch of leftists would have voted for a person who they believed was honest in saying, "I'm going to end that." Right? But we didn't get that. We were just told to be quiet. Homelessness up by 33% in 4 years under Biden-Harris, which is the highest leap in 4 years since we've been keeping track of the population of unhoused people in this country, right? Went up 18. I know you guys have covered it widely on RBN. You, Sabby, and Nick have talked about this. It's gone up 18%. Just last year alone was the biggest leap in homeless population. And so it was 12% in 23, 18%, 24, and a total of 33% over 4 years. Those numbers are astronomical. When we talked about it, the response we would get is, well, do you think Trump is going to do anything about homelessness? No, I don't. But that's not a reason for you not to do something or to call out for better candidates. So, let's get out of this electoral thing, because I could go all day and tell you, here's the bottom line. If liberals want to fight me on it, you better bring your A game, because I do not play with amateurs. Okay? The Democrats will not change. They will not reform. They will not uplift the lower classes. They will not transform fundamentally a system that is designed to have a permanent underclass. They will do none of that. They will do nothing about the climate. They're not going to do anything about transforming for true racial justice and dismantling white supremacy in this country. And they're not going to stand up for the queer community. They will not do any of those things. They will virtue signal on them. And when you point out the problems that exist under their administrations and on their watches, they will tell you to be quiet because that is inconvenient. This is what they said to Dr. King. When he said, look, this is what's going on, he was told, shh, now is not the time. LBJ said, Voting Rights Act, good idea, I believe, but not now, not quite yet. Wait, what did James Baldwin say? You know, you keep putting off. You keep his words were phenomenal because he was James Baldwin. But you know, you keep telling me to wait. You keep telling me to wait, and I don't see your waiting makes no sense to me. It means nothing to me. You cannot ask me to do that, right? You don't ask a drowning person to wait. You throw it, you jump in to save them, or you throw them the line. You don't say, let me decide. Listen, that guy, he'd push your head under. At least I'm talking to you as you go down. That's the liberals. And by the way, they're getting rich. They're doing well. You know, the podcasters that we think are full of shit, because we know they are, they're making bank. You know, I have hopes for some of them that they might come around. But once you get into that cushy club, you know, it's nice there. It's nice there. And, you know, but they have no intention. Remember George Carlin, one of his last rants. It's like 5 minutes, 6 minutes long. That's the one. And it was less of a comedy act and more of just like a truth telling for 5 solid minutes. And he's like, that's the one where he said, it's a big club and you and I ain't in it. He goes, remember, he said a whole bunch of things. And he goes, and they're going to come for your Social Security. They're going to do it. And you know what? They're going to get it. They're going to get it too. All of this has been going on with these two parties in power. And I think what we really need to reimagine is, do we even need the system as it is right now? And what do we do? And I think about this because I get mired into the political fights, right? Because I enjoy it sometimes, getting my point across. But what am I doing to contribute to the continuation of a fundamentally sick system? And what does it take to get imagination back? You know, when our podcast is over and each of us has some quiet time today, just take 3 minutes and close our eyes. What would the world look like? One that we say we're fighting for. What does it look like? Because I will tell you, the first casualty of this fight to prevent revolutionary change is always going to be, the first casualty will always be your imagination. They don't want you to imagine that it can be better. And what liberals have done is they've made a decision. Look, many of them are good people. Decided we do want these things, but we're never going to get them. So, like, what crumbs can we get? That's the young woman saying, please take the knee to the cop. She wanted something to show that she mattered and that the cops weren't so horrible, because the other reality is, oh, maybe that cop was a nice guy. I'm not saying he's a horrible man, but it's the system. The system of oppressive policing is horrible. That can never be dressed up. That has to change for our sake, for the sakes of the people who were put in the position. Those cops shouldn't have to do that either. All of that. But like our imagination is that first casualty. Don't imagine a world. Don't even think about it. Don't think there's ever going to be Medicare for all. That's never going to happen. You hear that all the time. How would we? It never happens until it does. It's always impossible until it does.
Yeah. It reminds me of the phrase, a person can imagine a little world before they and then imagine it into capitalism. And I just also want to direct attention to some people who will use the angst and anger of working class people, and they'll use somewhat populist and liberatory language in order to drum up support, but then they'll end up funneling people back into the same party that left them behind. And I want to direct attention to this as well, because even though this person is listed as an independent, they're still a Democrat. and they're still an op, in my opinion. Here's Bernie Sanders.
Oh,
Bernie,
poor Bernie.
really worried about Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia.
Okay, excuse me.
Will you do?
Excuse me.
Will you do
Excuse
a
me.
statement?
Thank you.
Will you? Will you not? Will you put out a statement?
What did I just say? I gotta go.
I
Excuse me.
I
Thank
know
you.
this is really, really dire. This is mean.
It's
They're
urgent.
coming
Wow.
after this student.
It was they illegally kidnapped him.
What did I just say? Look at Bernie getting sassy. Listen, that wasn't good, man. He was not having it. It's too bad. I mean, but he served a purpose, didn't he? Right? 2016, he lit a spark. He can't control it anymore because most of us are not with him. And listen, that doesn't mean that movement was a failure. It means he wasn't the guy. But whether he meant to or not, a lot of us are here because he reignited it. For many people who had given up, they thought there was hope. But look at man, what he's doing today. I don't know why he doesn't just retire, man. Like, enjoy your grandkids. Go to a Greek island or something. You got a little cash in the bank.
Yeah.
You're yelling at people to talk about the detention of Mahmoud Khalil. It was a legitimate question. The Trump administration just sent their DHS officials to arrest him. This is just how is he not even prepared for that question? Bizarre. Weird. What's he thinking? Very sad.
I think because I saw the Bernie of the past in the 1980s.
You
And the Bernie of the past seemed like, I think the Bernie of like 1986, 1987 would hate the Bernie Sanders today. He would hate his guts.
Oh, he was a dorky socialist.
Yeah. You know who else is a dorky? Well, I'm a communist. I'm a dorky communist. But here's the thing.
You are. No, but you can rock a suit, JB. I mean, Bernie just. I'm just saying.
Flattery will get you everywhere, Anthony.
I've learned that early on.
But let me share this as well, because it's not just Democrats that are feeling the fire from the people. Republicans are now starting to feel fire too.
Yeah.
People who consider themselves to be conservatives, Republicans are also ops. They're your ops. And let me share this with you too, because a lot of people are now seeing this and they're like, whoa, what's going on the Republican side? There's going on. This is a town hall. Let me share this from More Perfect Union. Let me share the caption really quick. Anger at DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, and the GOP is boiling over. Representative Chuck Edwards just got scorched at his own town hall over his support over massive cuts. This is, dare I say, this is Asheville, North Carolina, and this is all white people.
I know Asheville.
You're a veteran and you don't give a fuck about me. Shut the fuck up. You don't get the fucking union for us. You don't get to take away our rights. You don't get to take our rights. Get off of it. You don't get to do it.
I'm so angry. I'm so angry. Can I just say something? This has happened to me. Yeah. I've seen this happen at town halls and stuff. What are these fucking goons doing? First of all, the guy's yelling. You're allowed to yell. He's pissed off and he's like, I'm a veteran. You're all these cuts. And he was like, fuck you. Good for this guy. Good for this guy. Yeah. I love it.
Here's the crazy part though, right? The same people who say back the blue, what's going on right here in this video?
I know. Listen.
Back the blue, and yet the blue is helping suppress your free speech?
Well, there's no reason for them to go over that guy. He's allowed to talk. There's no volume agreement, like don't yell. He's yelling. And here's the thing. Democrats are pouncing. They're ready to pounce. They're like, all these Republicans are now canceling town squares. So the Democrats are like, good, we're going to hold them. And then the liberal cheerleaders are like, see, the Democrats are capitalizing on something the Republicans are doing wrong. They're going to hold town halls. And I'm like, to what end? What are you going to talk about at the town hall? Are you going to offer people health care? Are you going to tell them how you're going to fight for a living wage? How you're specifically going to increase unionism and the strength of unions? Are you going to tell them how you're going to give them protection against eviction from housing, including having their mortgages, taken over by the bank? Are you going to tell them what you're going to do to make their lives materially better, or are you just going to hold the town hall to say, we're talking to you, the other side isn't? It matters what you say. Lots of people are talking. Gavin Newsom's talking on his podcast, talking to that racist prick Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Right? Michelle Obama's talking on her podcast, and I got nothing personally against her. Like, she didn't run for office. She's a private citizen. Talk away on your podcast. You seem like a nice lady, but what are you saying on it? What are you saying? How are you using your position as the first lady to a president for the last 8 two-term Democrat, the first Black American president? Like, this is historic. What are you saying? And it's like, one of the episodes was a tip on how you and your friends could put together a podcast. Like, people are living in the streets. If you're gonna talk, what you talk about matters. What are you gonna say at the town halls? Because look, the Republicans, I'm waiting for the day, and it's happening when people on the Republican side are fed up too, because they realize they're getting scammed. You know what the first thing was? Trump. So I live in the Northeast. You're down in Florida, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately.
Look, for me, I'm just like, anything warmer, I'd be excited for, but I get it. Every place has their downsides. But we had all those drone sightings in the Northeast, and it was weird shit. Like, my neighbor posted this, and it wasn't just like people were noticing it for this was weird stuff hovering over their backyard, and then the flying in formation. And the thing is, the government was like, we don't know what it is. What do you mean? Something's weird. So Trump goes, when I take office, I'm going to tell you what it is. He took office, and all he said was, it's not a foreign attack. The government knows what it is. Nothing else to see. You didn't tell us anything. There was no transparency in that. Remember, he said that. Then it was the Epstein files. And again, these are not kitchen table issues. But they said, we're going to release. And I have to say, even I was like, are you really going to do this? Like, wow, this is a big deal. And I wasn't hopeful, but I was checking every hour or two. Like, are they out? Nothing. That was a big nothing burger. And then I'm not even going to get excited for the JFK files, right? Because it's just going to be one big redaction in the middle. The president was shot, and then boom, 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 Kennedy. It's not going to say anything. That's a metaphor for the whole thing, where Republicans, you're getting bamboozled too. So even the things that should be easy, they're not doing. They're not doing them. How do we channel that? Because the Democratic Party is not the answer for those disaffected working class Republicans, who we do have something in common with, right? Our class. We do have something in common with them. What is the answer? Christian Smalls was able to get a diverse group of folks in Staten Island, which can be very like traditional conservative, but there's also a lot of non-white people. There was this whole kind of melange of people. He got them together in that union based on the things they had in common.
Yeah.
So we probably need to talk about it. I know Shama Sawant and Jill Stein, and who else was there at the summit they had last month in February 22nd? Chris Hedges. Oh, right. Chris Hedges. They're having those conversations, and I'm happy that they're having those conversations. That class consciousness, they don't want us to have it.
No.
And by the way, it's a whole other thing. It's not about me. But I keep getting these like critiques from folks, and they're like, "What are you? You're an Ivy League, ivory tower professor. You're not working class." I'm an adjunct. I live and die on my class assignments. I used to work every summer. I used to always have a summer class. Not at Columbia. They usually don't have summer classes there. I just have fall and spring. But at the other schools that I worked at, I've had always had summer classes. Enrollment is down. And it's across the board, except for schools like Columbia that have the name. Enrollment is down. So like I haven't had those. I've done what I can, but I'm more privileged than others. But still, it gets to the point where we have a lot in common. We have a lot in common as working class people. How do we reach out? And I think we need to talk about that. And how do we do that without throwing vulnerable communities under the bus?
That's also true. And I just want to finish this video because I think it's really important. And I also have a statement that I want to make in regards to what you just said too, because I think that's an important conversation for us to have.
So to be clear, I deeply value the contributions that just to be clear, bullshit, and you're not every day.
Let him speak. Let him speak.
For example, folks at the National Weather Service.
Yeah, a lot of people from the National Weather Service actually got fired under Trump. But the point I want to make is people like this are now starting. This is hard. I want people's eyes to be open, but I don't want them to be harmed in the opening of their eyes. But unfortunately, some people are going to have to feel the pain in order to go, whoa, what's going on? Because they're now being shocked into being awake. And in that being shocked and being awake, somebody like myself, I'm going to be there to go, you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris were playing all of us. The Democrats and Republicans were playing all of us. We save us. Now we have to team together. But in order to do that, some of the views that you have about people who are marginalized, you need to walk away from those because we can't unite with people who we don't feel safe around. And so in order for us to actually have worker solidarity, you're going to actually have to have a modicum of respect and dignity for people who are different than you. And then we can come together and then we can march forward and actually have a worker-centered society instead of a top-down.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And if I could add something to that.
Please.
We're the centrality of our connected, our need to be connected as a working class does not dismiss all other issues. Intersectional class consciousness is necessary to move forward. It cannot be class consciousness at the expense of other vulnerable groups. So for those that don't know class consciousness, it's the idea of being aware that we as a working class share common struggles together, that we have struggles in common, and that it is through and that there is another class, the owner class, that whose needs are diametrically opposed to ours. So it is a zero-sum game in the sense that when they win, the owner class, those that are the takers of society, the billionaires and the multi-millionaires, and those who serve those powers, those are in direct opposition to our needs as a class. And class consciousness is being aware of that.
Yeah.
It is the waking up to the needs of class being different. Something in the United States, they do not like to talk about class. We are supposedly classless and free. And so class consciousness matters. And there's been this stupid, listen, the people out there who can't afford groceries don't care about your, I'm not saying we shouldn't read theory. I'm a big supporter of reading theory as much as possible. But if we can't boil it down to be useful to people who can't afford groceries, then what good is theory? You need to be able to translate it into action.
Yeah.
So in the process of elevating class consciousness, which would mean that me and that veteran who probably disagree on a whole host of issues would come together and have a nice conversation and say, like, I'm sorry you're struggling. What, here's what I'm experiencing. What do we have in common? What can we do together to get these fools out and get some real change going, right? That's class consciousness. That can never happen at the expense of vulnerable groups. I'm specifically talking about the queer community, but I have heard leftist podcasters shit on Black Lives Matter. I don't know why they're doing it. It's upsetting, which was basically just forget that group, Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about the movement during George Floyd for transformation of a truly unjust system that's racially structured. I've heard them shit on it, but I hear a lot of shitting on the queer community, specifically the trans community.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, your quote unquote transformational change, your revolution, your class consciousness will fail if you exclude groups. If you beat up on people that are vulnerable, especially the non-white trans population, because, and I'm from New York, and when I've been to protests on various things, whether it's a protest to stop the slaughter in the Middle East or a protest to give more funding for housing, queer people are always at the forefront of these fights, along with others. And I'm pretty sick of it. And I have, to this point, been really, really good about not calling people out for it by name, because I don't want to start a stupid war. It's not about personality, but you all know who I'm talking about. And it's a bunch of them. It's not just one. And my thing is, it does matter, because one of the most ultimate expressions of freedom is to be who you are. And when I hear people say oh, trans people, they're just confused. And I'm like, actually, they're the least confused people among us. They know exactly who they are in the context of a world that dismisses their reality. That takes clarity of thought, right?
Yeah.
And to hear people who were supposedly on the left populist movement taking cheap shots because you are too lazy to educate yourself on a trans issue. And I know that there's going to be people here listening to this live or on recording on YouTube, and they're going to say, well, Professor, a man can't become a woman. And you can think that. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm telling you, keep it to yourself, because it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't pertain to you. It's not your reality, and it has nothing to do with your life. Let people live their lives, and don't you dare shit on a population because you think it's going to score points with the people on the quote-unquote right. Because guess what? Struggling people who voted for Trump they really don't care about trans issues either. It's not high up on the list. It's like number 15 or 20 down the list. You know why? It doesn't affect their lives. So why are you bringing it up? Stop cheering the beating up of a group of people because you don't understand them. And I get it in my comments all the time. And I'm just like, listen, you don't get the issue. It's not okay. And by the way, the queer experience is not just defined by being trans, but it is currently something that a lot of people are latching onto. And that there are, I always bring this up, Lady Bunny, who is a radical drag queen, has been, I met Bunny, and I've seen Bunny's a fixture in New York, but Bunny's been on RuPaul's Drag Race.
They're pretty cool, I have to say. Lady Bunny, pretty cool.
Yeah, and now I forget what their pronouns are, but like it's another thing. Oh, I don't want to use pronouns. Dude, you use pronouns every day. It's a part of fucking speech, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't curse. I don't know about monetization. I think that's okay to do, as long as they don't say the.
Yeah, sprinkle it. It's like salt on food. It adds flavor. Go ahead.
But Bunny. So a lot of drag queens actually like the she. They'll go by the feminine pronouns when they're dressed in drag. But when you bump into them at the supermarket, if they're just not, you'd be like, hey, what's up? But radical anti-establishment, and the anti-police violence movement had a huge queer component going back to Stonewall, which was an uprising against police brutality in New York. And so you don't stop excluding. We need everybody. And it doesn't mean you need to understand everybody or their choices. They're not your choices. Let's not dwell on this, and let's dwell on where we meet in common and stop taking cheap shots at communities that don't have a lot of people standing up for them. And just because the Democrats say they're pro-LGBTQ and fly a pride flag does not mean the Democrats give a shit. When the marriage equality bill passed, Democrats took trans protections out. We've been fighting in New York for over a decade, more than over 2 decades, for trans protections. And we've only had Democrats run in the state for the longest time. And it took them forever to pass one little thing. Should have passed 15 years ago. Listen, Democrats are no friends to the queer community. And honestly, I cannot speak as a member of the non-white community, but I don't think they're friends to non-white folks, especially Black Americans as well, right? It's a virtue signal. They do it's spectacle over substance. You said it well in the beginning. It's all about spectacle. But we need to see people fighting for us, and we don't have to throw anybody under the bus to do it.
Yeah. And can I make just this point is just because we want liberation because I identify as a gay man. When we talk about liberation for ourselves in the queer community, or if we talk about liberation for ourselves in the Black community, that does not mean we are liberals. It means that liberals co-opted our language in order to try to placate us. So therefore, if you're getting mad at us for talking about liberation for us, especially when it comes to leaving capitalism and also gaining class consciousness, then you are missing the point. Because the thing is like every single time, and also I'm going to say this and I'm going to put a line in the sand. If you are associated with people who disparage and defame marginalized groups, and you have the power to go to that person and say, hey, that's not cool, we can't do that, or hey, don't mess with this person, they're fighting on the same side as us. If you don't have the intestinal fortitude to do that, that means you can't be trusted. This is the equivalent, and no offense to the present company, but this is like a white person being in a group of white people. And one of those people who is supposedly a comrade says the N-word, and you don't bother to say, hey, no, we can't have that.
Right.
If you don't have the wherewithal to be able to stand up for your other comrades who are working class, but they may be marginalized, if you don't have that, then do you really have working class consciousness?
Right.
Are you really for the working class? I'm not talking about just a subset of the working class. I'm talking about the entire working class.
Yeah.
Let's be real. The trans woman that's working the makeup counter at Bloomingdale's has more in common with you than you do with Elon Musk, who's a cisgender white male. Because guess what? Their eggs are way too high. Their rent is way too high. Their wages are suppressed, and they're getting their head bashed in by the police.
And they probably can't afford to buy the makeup at Bloomingdale's, especially the MAC counter. That shit's expensive. I'm just saying.
I try to go for the colognes, but I got to go to cheap stuff.
Don't even.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's about what matters and what's important. But I spent thank you for letting me spend a couple of minutes on this, because I hear people go out of their way unnecessarily to bash, and I think they're sending little dog whistle signals, like saying, hey, I'm shitting on the trans community too, making a joke out of it. It's like, it's not funny. And I'm not saying everybody's punch. And if it's a comedian, look, I love Chappelle, but there was a point when I was like, okay, the first few jokes, I'm like, all right. But at some point, man, Dave, you got to punch up, not down. That's the rule of good comedy. I know this. I know enough stand-ups, successful stand-ups, to know you punch up, you don't punch down. That doesn't mean you have to be quote unquote politically correct. Nobody is above a joke, but why are you focusing down there? And just let it go. Let's not make that the issue. So there's I'll share the link, and maybe you can share it with your friends. There's it's like a 20-minute video, a talk by this, and it's animated too, by Johan Hari. And he's an author. He's written extensively about addiction, depression, and things like that. But he connects it with neoliberalism. It's really amazing. It's funny, when I found him, I was like, that's a lot of the shit that I've been thinking. So it's good that he's out there and doing it. But he's got this one thing, and he's talking about happiness and depression. And he talks about a movement that took place in Germany, in a small section of a city, where they were raising the rents in supposedly rent-controlled areas. And a group in the community banded together. And it was all of these, like, hodgepodge of like right-wing people and they held their meetings with socialists and communists. They were people getting together, people that were apolitical, old people. And where did they meet? Some religious people too. They met in a queer bar that catered mostly to the trans community. So all these people, because that's the place in the neighborhood that gave them the space to meet. And they had a successful rent strike. They pushed back against the landlords and the city. And the thing is, all these people that might have been like at odds with each other got together. Nobody put anybody down. Nobody took the cheap shot. And that transformed. And I'll give you the link because it would be good to share. Obviously, you want to watch it and vet it, but I think your viewers will be interested in it. And it's that whole thing. Like King said, we go farther, faster when we go together. And he was very astute. And I'm a big fan of revolutionary thought like Malcolm and Franz Fanon. But Martin Luther King also got the point that you don't leave people out of your movement forward, because then it's not a real movement.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing though is, on the opposite side, the liberals will say, well, we believe in trans rights, but the moment we actually want universal health care for those of us who are queer, especially for trans people to be able to get their care that they need, for those of us who may be gay, who maybe want some type of either, the PrEP, or we need, meds for HIV or something like that. Or we just want general health care. If we want universal health care, we can't get it. If we want to give housing for all, because, queer kids who are teenagers are overrepresented in the homeless population, but yet you guys don't want to actually do universal, public housing that aren't down the street. So here's the thing. This is the problem with liberalism as well. This is why I say the Democrats are ops. Is because they don't care about queer people. They definitely don't care about us black people, because every single time we say the R word, and I'm not talking about that R word, I'm talking about the word called reparations for those of us who are freedmen, they want to turn the other way and go, no, I don't want to hear that. And when it comes to those of us who will talk about racial justice, and then when it comes to people who are disabled, who talk about making things more ADA making things more accessible for them. And actually, instead of giving us this pittance called disability, it actually is something that is better.
You know what they'll do?
They'll
hire somebody with a disability who uses a wheelchair for their cabinet, and they'll call it a day. Like, then they've done it. Listen, I don't know about other major cities, but in New York, as a social worker, this is something that I've taught about and that we've studied. The number of accessible train stations, subway stations, it's horrible. Like, there's actually YouTube videos of people who use wheelchairs, and they're trying to get from Brooklyn to this other part of the city, and it takes a half a day. And you or I, just who, if you're abled and you're able to just, walk down the steps to the thing, it takes 40 minutes. So, but you don't see anybody except for Zorhan running as a Democrat in New York. But I'm going to tell you, everything I hear from this guy is gold out of his mouth. He's talking about disability rights. Cuomo's not. They just want a virtue signal. And it's just, what is it that we want? We've got to be clear thinking. A therapist of mine years ago told me that the key to mental health is being comfortable with ambiguity without being ambiguous. In other words, the world is gray. You don't know the outcomes. You surely cannot control the behaviors of others. That's a gray area. But you don't be gray. Know what is right. Know what your values are. Make sure you have intentions, and that your intentions match your values, and then that your actions match your intentions. And the whole idea is that you need to have clarity, despite that the world not having clarity. So I think those on the quote-unquote left, that broad umbrella, left populism, need to understand, how do we come together? And that's why I love what Shama Sawant, Chris Hedges, and Jill Stein did, and all the people that put it together. Let's talk about, what is our vision? How will that benefit people in this country and in the world in general, right? Because a foreign policy that's not imperial is going to benefit everybody. What are our intentions? What is our vision for the future? How will that materially impact the lives of working Americans, working class Americans? And what do we intend to do to make that a reality? Here are the actions we are taking. And then contrast with the message of the other parties, which is, we can't do those things. So that goes back again to having imagination, the ability to vision what the better world is, and then having the temerity to stick with it and to put that into words and to share it. I think that's the thing they want to kill in us.
Yeah. We need to dream bigger, right? And when it comes to what we can have, there are other countries that already have done it. The thing is, it's not some people trying to imagine that doesn't exist. It already exists. We just need to do it, an American version of it. And so when people talk about, we got to get rid of all these homeless people who are out in the street. All right, just give them housing. Well, we can't do that. We can't just give them housing. Finland did it.
I know. Just build the houses. We got the resources. Forget the money. Money is an illusion. You've got the labor. You've got a bunch of excess labor. You've got the resources. You've got the wood. You've got the hammer. You got the nails. You got the concrete. You got the trucks to drag it all in and lay the foundation. You get the people to work and to build it up. You can do that. You can do that easily. You can do it tomorrow. You don't even have to wait. You can build a house. You can build an apartment building. You can make an apartment building that exists. Repurpose it. There's all this land and property and, humans. What is it? I'm trying to think of what it is. We only a tiny percent of the Earth's surface is actually populated, has populations living on it. The vast majority of the surface of the planet, first of all, most of it's water, but even the land mass, only a percentage of it is, but we got plenty of space. And we've
Oh,
got.
you can fit every human on Earth in the state of Texas.
Oh, is it that?
Yeah,
Yeah, we should all go there.
Every human on Earth in the state of Texas.
But wouldn't it?
That's how.
But
How much room we have. In fact, I think it was.
But wouldn't that tip over the Earth?
I think Colonel Wilkerson. He was talking with Danny Haiphong, and he said we probably have enough room for another 40 to 50 million more people just in America alone. Like we can fit that many more.
Right.
So this whole we don't have enough room, that's BS. That's like somebody locking you in a room and saying this is all we have when you're living in a mansion. And next thing you know, all you got to do is unlock the door and leave outside the room, and you got plenty of room.
The mansion. The rest of the world looks at us. We're like the rich kid who lives in the what you think is a mansion in your town, and you're like, oh my God, they must have so much money, and they do. But then when you go in the house, it's a fucking mess. And that's America, because people look and they're like, America, land of the opportunity, and they come here and they find out that people, pay $30,000 to have a baby. That's a lot of money for a 6 or 7 pound ball of screaming needs that won't let you sleep for 3 solid years. That's a lot to pay for that, is my point. I know I'm getting a little, I must have stolen that from Lee Camp or something, but if I didn't, he should steal that from me. Lee, please feel free. I don't mind. But the point is, they don't get that this is our life here, and so we have this the veneer of this amazing place, and dude, there's so much shit. We don't have high-speed rail. I mean, I remember talking about high-speed rail in the 80s, when I was 3. Kidding, but I remember hearing about it in the 80s. They've been talking about high-speed rail forever. Remember when you live in Florida? Have you been to Disney World? Right?
A few times.
Yeah. The land of whatever, Epcot. I remember going as a kid, and they're like, this is what the future will be like. And there were these quiet monorails, when you're like, the future's going to be we're all going to have jetpacks, and it's dirtier than it was. Things are crazier than they were. And that's all by design. That's not necessarily the way it had to go.
Yeah.
We didn't still have to be here. We didn't still have to be fighting for racial justice in 2025.
Right. The word Epcot is actually an acronym.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It stands for Experimental Prototype City of Tomorrow. That's what it stands for.
They told us when I was little, and it was exciting.
Yeah. And the monorails are still there. They still operate.
But we're supposed to have them here.
Well, the thing is that when you live in capitalism, innovation is actually your enemy. Because innovation means that it takes away profits from you. This is why they don't like to innovate.
You want shit that don't last.
System back in the early 19th century, the car companies bought, I think, was it General Motors or one of them? They bought up their trolleys and then they put them in storage because they wanted everybody to drive cars instead. Well, when in reality, we could have had public transportation en masse, high-speed rail by now if the auto companies had allowed it to happen. But it didn't allow it to happen. And now we're in this mess that we're in right now. So now, and people are going, well, we want to fix fossil fuels. And then the Democrats go, well, we're going to fix fossil fuels by having electric cars. And then now we're going to other countries that have lithium. And now we're their governments. We're taking over their governments. We're destabilizing their governments for lithium. You guys are way off base when it comes to actually doing something that's conducive for us humans so that we can also still be stewards of the planet. And so we literally have everything we needed. But the thing is, every single time we try to do something, they kill it because they know that it's going to challenge power or give us the means to be able to do
money. Yeah. Did you ever hear about the light bulb cabal back in
Oh yeah, I think I heard about that.
100 100 years ago, more than that, they came up like so. The original incandescent bulbs.
Yes.
The original one. There is one original one. It's 100 years old and it's still lit and it has never been turned off and it's hanging in like a firehouse, some historic firehouse somewhere in the United States. Is it Ohio or Pennsylvania or something? I don't know, but yeah, the original incandescent light bulbs that they made lasted like 15 years. That's just the design. It's a pretty, like if you look at physics, the way that they're created, it's a very, very reliably basic design. And granted, it's not an efficient way to give off light because most of the light energy, the photons end up going out in the form of heat energy. But it doesn't matter. The point is, the original incandescent bulbs lasted like 13 and 15 years. And then a bunch of the lighting companies got together and were like, we're making products so good, nobody needs to ever buy them again. So they had a decision. They were going to make the bulbs worse. And they all agreed that the only way it would work is if they all did it. So they all decided, the heads of the corporations, to make their products worse. This was their policy, and it still is. I think.
Yeah.
Did you want to jump in? I don't mean to.
Well, I wanted to jump in and say,
you're the host.
And people don't think that doesn't still apply even in our healthcare system. Planned obsolescence.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we talk about innovating, Cuba has a lung cancer vaccine.
I know. I want to go down there and get that vaccine and smoke cigars.
I want my first cigar to be a Cuban. But the thing is that it's like they literally have a lung cancer vaccine. They're literally curing diabetes in China, but the United States does not want their scientists to commune with the Chinese scientists, because then that means that there's a cure for diabetes, then that means that may end up ruining things. Or if they were to get their hands on the cure, they would want to hold it, patent it, and make it so expensive that they can make as much money off of it as possible, while withholding it from the masses of actually working and poor people. And so, no, they don't want to innovate, and they want to do planned obsolescence too. Keep you stabilized, keep you just stable, just enough so that you keep on clocking in every single day,
right,
and
now
working and giving your surplus labor to the people, to the shareholders.
It did not work with me because I am not stable. And I am not, I'm listen, it's a miracle sometimes. I get up and I'm like, yes, I did it again, another day. But so here's where imagination comes in. I've said this before. I thought the pandemic was a puzzle. And it was almost like a puzzle, a test that aliens came up with to see, are humans ready to join the galactic community? And we failed the test. The test was, here's a puzzle that can only be solved if everybody works together. Because viruses, and by the way, yes, the pandemic really happened. Like COVID-19 is, it likely was created in a lab according to a whole bunch of research. That's not the point. The point is, it really was a virus that really did infect people and make them ill. And here's the puzzle. You've got a virus that doesn't know borders. And since we globally travel, it's going to be around the world within a matter of days and weeks, and it was. And now the challenge is we all work together, putting profit aside, to create a safer environment for everyone. And we failed. We went to competition. Listen, no matter what somebody feels about the vaccine, if the vaccine was going to help at all, the fact is, why would you patent it? It shouldn't be patented. It shouldn't be copywritten. This stuff should have been just these formulas freely shared with the world. All medicine is to the benefit of all humankind. We don't do that. So you're right. If China has a cure for diabetes, we do not want Americans to get that. That's Why do you think they want to ban TokTik, right? TikTok and TokTik, they want to ban it. They don't want us talking to each other. They don't want us finding out that they have high-speed rail in other places, that like healthcare is free or almost free and medicine is almost free. They don't want us to know. And if we don't talk to each that, you know, that unwritten rule, have you ever done, like, I don't know if you ever worked like in an office, you know, that atmosphere. One of the things is you're never supposed to discuss salary. And I'm like, bullshit. We need to talk about what we all make. And you start finding out that, like, oh my God, this one's making that much. Because everybody in the office, I'm thinking of specific people now, everybody in the office knew she didn't do shit. She didn't work at all. Why is she the highest? Oh my God. And then you look at these other people, and then you saw the racial disparity. Let me tell you, there's a reason they don't, and the gender disparities. They don't want to talk about salary because they don't want you to have coalescing together. You know, and that's where imagination again comes in. Can we imagine a world where it's different? Can we imagine a world where medical innovations are shared among all people? I can't imagine China doesn't want that, right? Like, I don't think they're perfect. There's a bunch of things I'd change in that society if they asked me, but the bottom line is, I think they would want to share that technology. I think Russia would too, right? Russia's got a very vibrant science community as well. We need to be working together. People of the world need to realize that. Like, you know who I love? And I really miss dearly? Anthony Bourdain. Do you remember that guy?
I wasn't. So I knew who he was, but I never really watched him.
It's on like Prime, I think, or Max, or one of those streaming services. He just would go around the world to different places and sit and have meals with people. And it was such a basic thing to do.
It is, yeah.
And he did it in the West Bank and Gaza. He did it in Iran, you know, and in Israel. But he was in Vietnam. He was in all these places, and he would just sit down with people and have a meal and then talk. And you really get the sense like, wow, we could look. Most Americans don't even travel outside of our borders ever. Most Americans have not been outside of the United States.
Yeah.
Go to Europe. That's the opposite. They've all traveled to all the other countries. Everywhere you go, you get on the train, you can go from Italy to France to Spain to Belgium and all these places. They all go around. You don't have to be rich to do it. All of them know. It's rare to find a European that doesn't know more than one language.
Yeah.
We're the oddball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I really do think that we need to diversify where we go and also diversify the people who we build community with. Because once you start to diversify the types of people you build community with, you start to build community with people who are marginalized, then you really start to see yourself in those people. And so therefore you have a wanting to, and you start to see the world as a global whole instead of you yourself by yourself as an individual.
I love that you said that. Can I get woo-woo for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
We're just having a chat, and you're streaming it just in case anybody wanted to sit in on our chat, right? That's what this is, you know, right? So, two of my loves in my life, knowledge-wise, outside of like social work and, you know, and policy,
sure.
are physics and biology. I am not an expert in either of these things.
Okay.
During the pandemic, you know, there was a lot of downtime, and I started diving into physics again, and a little bit into biology, and then more so after the pandemic with the biology stuff.
Okay.
And looking, you know, just watching videos, lectures from these really cool cats like Brian Greene. He's a professor at Columbia. He's an amazing physicist. You know, of course, I love astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. I just think he's awesome. But this guy, Brian Cox, there's a bunch of folks out there, you know, and they're, you know, quantum physicists and really diving in and reading and all. And then looking also at the spiritual aspect of it. And so here's the deal. As I see it, and I bring this into my teaching as it's relevant to social work. Individuality is a myth. I argue there's no such thing as an individual person. We do not exist with that. And I'm not just talking about the way we need to live together. I'm talking about the physical reality of our beings does not exist in a self-contained individual. Physics proves it. I mean, just the idea that these cells are all in flux all the time and are exchanging electrons with our immediate environment and that whole thing. And I don't want you to lose viewers. I'm not going to dive too deep, but it's really interesting to me is that individuality itself is a myth, I believe. Mm-hmm. That we do not exist separate from our community of other humans. And then if by extension, humans don't exist separately from the community of all life on this planet. And then broader lens back, life on this planet does not exist separately from the planet itself. In fact, that name has been given, it's been given a name, that life form, Gaia. Gaia is the planet Earth and all the life on it and quote unquote non-life, conscious and non-conscious life that makes up the planet. We are part of a system. And so biology proves this to be true. So like your cells, you have trillions of cells in your body and all of them work together to perform a function. So when a bunch of cells have like one kind of quality, they're called a tissue. And when a bunch of tissues get together with a certain function, that's an organ. You're very familiar because of you know, your struggles with your health. You obviously you understand the parts of your system that are involved in insulin regulation and sugar regulation and things like that. It's an amazing thing that the body does all this stuff in the background. So like right now, you and I are having this conversation. There's all this stuff going on in the background. You're breathing, your lungs are processing oxygen. You don't know this is happening. You're just glad that it is, and it hasn't stopped at this point, right? But the point is, all these cells are like little workers, and they're doing their own little parts. If you take some of the cells out and isolate them, they show intelligence. So if you take a skin cell or something and put it in a petri dish and you put something toxic near it, it moves away. Like their cells have the innate intelligence of trying to go toward that which is good and away from that which is bad. It's the primary survival instinct. Okay, and to bring it home. So I recently read a book on honeybees called Honeybee Democracy. And it's a fascinating book because it really talks about how bees make decisions on how to find a new hive. And by the way, they've been doing this for 50 million years. They are way more advanced than we are. And almost every time they make the decision on what the best hive is. How do they do it? Because they send some scouts out to look around and then they have to communicate. Then they've got to give directions to the whole. It's amazing. What neuroscientists were studying is that the bees functioned like a primate brain. They had their own individual parts. And when you looked at these parts together, it functioned to make a decision. And they said, that's how our brains work. You are literally a conglomeration of a whole bunch of things going on. Why does that matter to me in this conversation? Because that's what our society is. We really are individuals, individual cells in a society. And we each have our function and we work together in groups. And the whole idea is to work toward a common end of good, of life flourishing. When a few cells in the body become selfish, that's called cancer, right? Because now those cells are stealing the resources from the other cells. They also, cancer cells don't differentiate, so they don't serve a function. They don't do the things like you getting the insulin to process the sugar and bring the they don't do any of that. They don't turn the air that you breathe in into oxygen and expel carbon. They don't digest enzymes from food. They don't do that. The cancer cells have no function. They don't contribute anything to the good of the body. They just take the resources. That's the top 1%. And so we are a body. Our society is a body. And if I'm losing people here, I apologize. But I just, this whole idea of why we are a part of something bigger than us and why we need to work together, because that is literally the law of the universe. The only way any life form has ever succeeded was through cooperation. And our body proves it every day. When your body is cooperating, for those of you who don't have a chronic illness, you know what it's like when you get the flu. Shit ain't cooperating, and you feel it. And all of a sudden, it's like you go to get out of bed, but you're sluggish and you can't move, and you feel like you want to eat, but you want to throw up. That's your body in disorder. And so what we're looking to do is create a world where there's not perfection, but where we're working together in that harmonious balance. That's not pie in the sky. That's actually the way humans survived for 98%, almost 99% of our existence as a species. This way. Because if it was any other way, we would not have, we weren't very fast. We weren't very strong. We did not have big fangs or claws. We were the prey, not the predator. The only way we survived was through cooperation. It's literally baked into us.
And can I piggyback off of this? Because this goes into a philosophical conversation about the systems that we are in right now in relation to us as human beings. Humans, by our very nature, are a communal species.
Yes.
If you have a fawn, a cub that's born, and you leave them alone, they can survive. Put a human baby alone, and what happens? They die. Because we need community as an intrinsic need of survival in order for us to live. Because humans cannot operate by ourselves. Because once we start to operate by ourselves, then we become more subject to the elements, we become more subject to nature, and then we will die off very quickly. Versus being able to be communal with each other, then our survival rate goes up. And when you think about societies, and yes, I am a communist, so when you think about socialist countries, what is one of the first things that always goes up once a socialist government takes over? Literacy, life expectancy, things like that. Because they're operating on a communal system. To deviate from a communal system means it is anti-human at its very foundation. Therefore, a system that centers itself on a material thing like capital means that is antithetical to the survival of those of us humans. Meaning, if you have this system surrounding us, therefore humans are going to die off. We're going to die off. We're going to die off. We're going to die off. Because, and needlessly, because the system is dictating that this very thing, the greenbacks, the simoleons, the dollars are more important than the survival, the collective survival of those of us human beings. And so when people talk about, oh, well, capitalism innovates, no, it does not. Let me tell you something. We would have never went out into space if it weren't for the Soviets. Because it was the Soviets who actually were the first ones that were in space.
Yes.
The communists were the first ones that actually in space. Why? Because they thought, well, what can we do to better ourselves? Let's innovate. Let's look to the stars. So that's what they did. And in the United States, we're like, they got scared because they thought, these people, they're turning into Star Trek. We don't want them to do that. So we got to prove that capitalism can do it too. Guess what? Now you're paying $12 for a carton of eggs. And you're wondering why. And so the thing is, when people talk about, and then you have people literally out in the street, homeless, and then they're dying from things like hypothermia or heat exhaustion.
Speaking of the Russians in space, do you remember the beginning of the war with Ukraine when Russia invaded?
Sure.
And all of a sudden there was all this anti-Russian pushback in weird circles. Like I get people speaking out against the invasion. I'm against war, and I'm against big countries, especially invading little countries. That should have been solved diplomatically, right? And the United States was truly an impediment to the diplomatic solution there. But be that as it may, there were all these weird things. They were like canceling Russian ballets. What did the fucking ballet person have to do with Putin and his government's decision to invade Ukraine? Okay, they were canceling, but you talked about Russians in space. The first human in space was Yuri Gagarin, and they took him, like, his plaque away from some university in the West, right? Not there. You know why? How do you not acknowledge the guy was a scientist and a pilot, and he went into space? And by the way, being the first to do that probably is a little scary. That's why they sent chimpanzees up first, because they didn't know they'd be coming back. That was a Russian. They pushed back. We weren't allowed to celebrate the fact they're rewriting history. Our achievements only exist when we work together. So yeah, like, friendly competition is good. And by the way, I love science. I've never seen a group of people more competitive than researchers. Like, I've been to conferences, and they don't physically fight each other, but it's fun to watch. But here's the thing. They're doing it all in the spirit of contributing to the greater good. The best physicists will say, I'm okay if I'm proven wrong, right? Like, I get it. I just want the knowledge base to increase and continue. So the belief that we are all part of a greater body, of a greater consciousness, that's actually reality. And everything about our world created, constructed in this reality is the false reality. It's the shadows on the wall of the cave of Plato's allegory. We are not seeing things for what they really are. And the real thing is, we are all connected. In 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was given to a team of physicists that proved something called non-locality. And non-locality, kind of, basically, to sum it up, everything in the universe is literally connected. And they showed quantum entanglement in a way that it never existed before, where you take one particle and it's connected with one particle, and you could move it, 10 miles apart in a hadron collider, and it still communicates. Well, now they proved if you put it on the other side of the galaxy, it still communicates. And what their conclusion is space really isn't real. We literally are all one big thing. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Here's how I think we win. I don't discount anything in the way, like, I am a big endorser of strikes and boycotts and political action. I'm nonviolent. That is my path that I choose to try to walk on. I don't judge others' paths. I understand why violence happens. I wish it didn't. But that does not, I don't judge other people's rights, especially, like, let's get into the resistance to white supremacy. In the 1960s, there were militant movements of non-white folks, and my position is always like, Yeah, but that's not my place to judge how you fight off your oppression. I don't get to tell you how to do that. The most I can do is work to dismantle the system of privilege and oppression that exists because it's wrong, you know? But anyway, so I look at that walking through nonviolently because I know some people on the left push back, and I'm like, you have to look at your world through your lens. This is my lens. I am not judging you. What we need to do, in addition to all the action and the education and the mutual aid, which I think RBN does an amazing job with, the mutual aid and the education piece, we need to be able to believe that not only are we right, but that we are winning, and that ultimately we will win. MLK knew this. He said the arc of the moral universe is long, but I believe it bends toward justice. And I think that's an important thing. He knew, as a spiritual leader of a social movement, he needed to let people know, keep your eye on that outcome. And I think this is important. What I'm not doing, no offense, Marianne Williamson, I'm not saying that all we need to do is meditate and vision, the perfect world. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying without action, none of it happens. However, defeatism will guarantee it doesn't happen. So the action has to be with a sense of knowing that we are moving forward. And they try to rob us of our ability to imagine, which I believe the reality is, that we have already won. And I think everything that's happening now is them flailing, them being the rulers, the owners, the political class, the owner class, the capitalist class. They are failing, and they know it. And they're trying desperately to prevent us from recognizing they already lost. And what's the proof of that? Censorship is the first indication they have lost. Because when you've got the winning argument, you don't need to censor anybody. Right? If you're with a group of friends trying to decide, what do you want to do tonight? And one's like, let's go to this restaurant over here. And one's like, I want Indian food. Okay, why don't we go get Indian food? Then we could all go to a movie. And everyone's saying the things that make sense. And you're going to choose one of these things. And another friend is like, I want to go to Mars. You're just going to you're not going to tell him to shut up. You're just not going to listen to his idea because it's a dumb one. And you're not going to Mars. And you know that. What's going to end up happening is you're going to go for Indian food, or you're going to go for burgers, or you're going to go for your whatever. It's a messy metaphor. I've never thought this one through. You're going to listen to the stuff that makes sense, and that's reality based. If you have to censor, it's because you're afraid. And both parties are terrified of reality. They know they're wrong. They know their game is up. They know we see them. They know that Trump ran as a populist, and he invites Elon Musk, the richest man ever to live on the face of the earth, ever, to chime in on Social Security and cut federal jobs, which disproportionately affect non-white Americans and veterans. So now you got Democrats wanting to elevate a billionaire like J.B. Pritzker. By the way, that's who they want to get in. They want their billionaire, and they'll invite Mark Cuban in as an advisor and be like, he's our Elon. See, we can do it too. We're better than them. The game is up. The only way they think they can win is by censoring us, by demonetizing you, by the algorithm not promoting. Your shows are excellently produced. All of them. You, Sabby, Nick, all of it the channel's doing pretty well, but you should have millions of viewers. The only reason you don't is because they're afraid. They're afraid of what you have to say because it's very simple. Your message is life could be better. Here's how it can be better. If it were more fair, it would be better. These people don't want it to be more fair. So they censor. I'm letting people know this is not just pie in the sky. People who've looked into this, who understand human behavior, human dynamics, are coming to this conclusion. We already won. They already lost. If you watch basketball, it's just a matter of running down the clock at this point. They have the illusion that they want us to not know that they are losing. And it's the same. Look what the Democratic Party did. Butch Ware said, we've known since January. They knew too that they couldn't win. So what was all this that we saw? What was all of this performance? That's the story with the ruling class. They have already lost.
I have an analogy as to what you just said, and I call it the pregnancy analogy. And hopefully it works. But the analogy is this country is pregnant. It's in its 8th month. We're about to go through the 9th month. And in that pregnancy, you have 2 options that's going to happen to this baby. Either one option, this baby is going to come out dead as a stillborn, which is totalitarianism, because we're already in fascism, in my opinion. Or number 2 is going to come into socialism, and we're going to have a live birth. Only 2 options is going to happen. There's no third option. There's no either a baby comes out alive or dead. It's going to be 1 and 2.
Wait, or it could be Bill Moore.
Oh, dear God, no.
That would be like in between, I think, somewhere.
No. But my point is that we are the doulas that are we are the midwives that are trying to coach this country into giving a live birth, because we know that anything else otherwise spells doom for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing is we're trying to take this country to the Lamaze classes. We're telling this country to breathe. We're trying to put some neonatal vitamins into this country. We're trying to get this country to, do a little bit of walking, do a little bit of resting. Oh, have you had your green vegetables today? That's what we're doing, right?
I wash my greens in the back.
No, stop. Because they want that stillborn to happen. Because they want that totalitarianism to happen. Because anything else outside of that, it spells doom for them. And the thing is like the blood pressures of the fetus is going up. And is going to actual levels. The blood sugar of that fetus is leveling out now.
Yeah.
The neurons that's firing that fetus are firing like clockwork now, because everybody's starting to wake up. And so now this fetus is starting to look like, about to have a live birth. I think we're doing better.
They can't stop it.
The ruling class is scared out of their minds.
But it doesn't.
The birth is about to happen, and you're about to hear a wham, 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 and everybody else is going to end up faring better than the ruling class.
I like your baby.
I just want to put that analogy out there.
I like that little baby cry. That was good.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, I like the analogy. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying this means everything is going to happen easily. I'm saying, there's pain. Childbirth, like you said, well, gosh, I've heard it's painful. I went through it as a person coming out, but not being a human who's able to birth a child, I'm never going to know that. Plus, there's all of that. But the point is that I'm not saying this is an easy done deal. I'm saying they already lost. It's a matter of what happens. And here's how I know. And it's happening on both political sides, if there are 2 different political, but it's happening with Republicans and Democrats. And here's the deal. They, no matter what they do, it backfires. And that's how you know they're losing. It's like a sports analogy, with the bad coach. I like baseball. I watch other sports too, but every move they make ends up being the wrong one. It's like, oh God, you took the pitcher out. Why did you take him out in the 7th inning? That guy was pitching great. You're nuts. Those things, everything they do backfires, then it just wasn't meant to be. And, maybe that's how the Chiefs felt. at the Super Bowl because they thought they were going to win that game. But everything they're doing is backfiring. So the Democrats did not expect the pushback against their material support and intelligence support for Israel's right-wing government and the material support for the slaughter and the occupation and genocide in Gaza and then the West Bank and then eventually Lebanon. They did not expect this level of pushback at all. So they did this thing that usually when they do it, people are like, well, we're on the right side, and they got pushback and didn't expect it. This is not new either. It goes back to Biden. They got lucky with Biden. When they pushed out Bernie in 2020, who, I mean, as much as I think I have many problems with him today, I still think he would have been better, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the system wouldn't have transformed. That said, the reaction to Biden was not what they expected. Look, they did a few things for us. They gave us the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act is actually good. Biden's Labor Relations Board was good, but there were no material. And I say that, people are like, oh, so what? I'm like, it does matter. He had good people on the NLRB. But the point that matters is there was no immediate material benefit to any worker because the NLRB was well-staffed. Most of the decisions they made had to do with the future, and they were good decisions. But ultimately, he didn't help us materially, and he ended the pandemic emergency measures, sending poor people even poorer. You know the story about that. You guys have widely covered it on your channel. That said, they did not expect the reaction to Biden to be what it was. Every move they made didn't work. They said, let's run around telling everybody how great the economy is, and people were like, no, it's not good. So they got all that pushback. Then they're like, let's push it past the primaries, and if he implodes, we'll have Kamala come in or somebody else. It didn't go the way they wanted there. They put in Kamala, and within a month, she started tanking. Nothing they did worked. Nothing. Let's tell everybody how bad a guy Trump is. Didn't work. Made him more popular. What about the Republicans? Same thing on their end. They're doing all these things, and now their base is getting up in arms. And it's like, nothing the empire is doing is really working. And that's how you know they're losing, because they're getting more and more desperate. When Rubio is like, yeah, we got to deport that student. He's a threat to national security. Mahmoud Khalil is a threat to national security. Like, I believe you think that you disagree with his speech. I understand you don't like what he says, but if the dude is like a threat, that's you're looking weak and desperate. And what are you talking about? They're not serious on either side, and they don't know what to do, because usually the old games usually work, but they're not working anymore. It's like, I lament the death of the sitcom. There were some good sitcoms, those half-hour sitcoms, and there's a whole bunch of things wrong with them, dominant culture-wise, but you would see, like, when network TV saw that streaming was taking off some years ago, they kept coming out with them, and they were like, oh, we'll try this, we'll repackage this. And people were like, yeah, we're not buying that anymore. That's not what we want. We would like an hour-long drama that's well-written, or we would like a documentary that's well-researched. People wanted something more. And they kept trying the same old tricks. It's like when a little kid wants to get over on the parents and keeps doing the things that used to work when they were younger, but now they're not working anymore. That, to me, is what I'm seeing with these political parties, and it's what I'm seeing with the media.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's watching CNN, MSNBC, and Fox anymore? First of all, nobody's watching Fox under the age of 65, right? I mean, nothing wrong with the older people. I'm just saying they don't have the 25 to 30 to 44 demographic that spends money. That's the only demographic that matters. Nobody really has that. So they keep trying things. None of it's working. None of it.
I mean, they're trying to adapt, just like the Democratic Party is trying to adapt. But there's elements where people are now starting to wake up and realize that it's not me as an individual that's a failure, it's the system. One of my favorite quotes is, if a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which the flower grows, not the flower. People are realizing that there are flowers that are failing to bloom in a system that is not conducive to them thriving. It is incongruent with our survival. And so people are realizing this. You can see this on TikTok. You see people, getting their minds blown on Xiaohun Shu, Red Note. You can see people now starting to look at the Republican Party with disdain. You have MAGA voters starting to look at the Republican Party with disdain. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. In about 9 to 12 months from now, Donald Trump will lose about 30% of his supporters because he's going to fail so badly. They're going to realize that he is no different than Joe Biden. And it's going to be accelerated by somebody like an Elon Musk, because DOGE is actually going to accelerate the breakdown of whatever is left of the middle class. And so this is really our opening. This is actually the prime time for us organizers to really start pulling people and building more class consciousness, because Trump is going to mess up big time. And when he does, we will be in wings saying, come with us. This system is not doing you any good. And we're also saying to the Democrats, guess what? The Democrats aren't doing you any good either. Let's work together because we save us. And that's
I think it's important that we jump in the space now and say, no, we don't need a better billionaire. So when you try to run JB, for those that don't know JB Pritzker, he's very congenial. He comes across like a nice guy.
Like a Waltz, like a Tim Waltz.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, I'm not a friend to the current Democratic Party. Tim Walz does not seem like a horrible guy. I probably could sit down and talk to him. So there are things, and I like that he said that if Democrats get in power again, they better be prepared to give us universal health care. Listen, man, if you're saying that, you are my friend, right? You should have been the nominee, not Kamala. The hell, she was a disaster. And so, but yeah, JB Pritzker comes across nice. He does embrace some considered progressive change. In Illinois, he's the governor of Illinois. Okay. He's also an heir to the, is it Hyatt? I think it's Hyatt family fortune. His sister Pritzker, I can't think of her first name, served in the Obama administration. I think she, for a while, was education secretary. They're big. Before he was in office, they were big Democrat donors. He's a multi-billionaire. He's worth over $4 billion. He's worth a lot of money. And Democrats are going to try to run him. And the danger here is they're going to do this whole, we've got a better billionaire. All we need is the good billionaires in power. That does not transform the system. So before they get the chance, so we're not letting them set the agenda, I think we really need to push strategy-wise. There are no good billionaires. There are no good billionaires. There are no good multimillionaires. There are none. I'm not saying those, and they shouldn't exist. And I'm not saying the people should not be allowed to walk around on Earth. I'm saying the status of being a billionaire should not be a thing. It shouldn't exist. You shouldn't be able to do it. So we need to come out with this anti-oligarchy message that is all-inclusive. And take the Democrats and Bernie's anti-oligarchy tour at face value and say, yes, I'm glad you're doing this. I agree. All oligarchs out of the party. We vow right now that we will never vote for anybody who serves them or is a member of that class. And billionaires are bad. Get the messaging out, because they are. And it's very simple stuff. And people believe it. And look at the reaction to Luigi Mangione. I mean, the guy is accused of committing a cold-blooded murder. Normally, when somebody is in that position, the public sentiment is against them. And yet, you've seen the opposite. What is that about? Could it be that people hate healthcare companies, executives, and people with that much money more than they mind what happened? Look, I'm not making public sentiment, and I'm not telling people how to think, but I'm reading the tea leaves, and I'm like, I actually wasn't surprised at the reaction, because it's been a long time coming for people to have. People need to feel like someone's fighting for them. I would prefer Bernie had won in 2016 and actually gave us Medicare for all. That's the way it goes. But when you prevent that, look, you got some bad stuff happening. As a result of it, we told you this shouldn't be the case. But the public sentiment is very anti-billionaire. And also we have to get on top of it, because the Republicans, there's a lot of MAGA out there, they agree. Yeah. Not the ones online. Ignore those Elon lovers online.
Yeah.
That's not most people.
Mm-mm.
I don't know.
I even talk to people who I think are Trump voters by the way they speak and about Donald Trump and things like that. And I'll say a lot of what I just said today, and they will completely agree with me. There is overlap. The problem is a lot of times, the cultural war stuff gets in the way. But my thing is in a system like this, if you don't, I'll put it this way. Let's take it back to slavery. If you don't listen to the abolitionists and get rid of slavery now, that's how you get a Nat Turner and a John Brown.
Yeah. That's the thing. We're just describing. I like that you said that. And look, Nat Turner's rebellion and John Brown, Harper's Ferry, let's not, both of them, they were a big deal. And they're not that they're glossed over. People know them in history, but the significance ends up being glossed over. But look, what ended up stopping slavery was violence. The Civil War was violent. It was it should never have come to that. It should never have come to that. It didn't have to come to that, because people were saying it for decades. Any social movement of transformative relevance has taken a long time to happen. And that's why I'm not saying now is not the time. I'm saying don't feel impatient because you haven't gotten there yet. These things take time. But how long the abolition movement was going on for decades. And the fight for civil rights went on for decades in the 20th century. Not that we ended up, things aren't at all where they need to be, but they got the Civil Rights Act signed. They got the Voting Rights Act signed. There was other legislation that was valuable to make things better than it was before. That took decades. And when you look at history, you're like, oh, these four young men sat at a lunch counter, and then Martin Luther King marched on Washington, and then LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's like, those things are all true, but you're not talking about all the stuff that led up to this and happened in between.
And the violence.
And the violence, which should not, violence begets violence. Right? It just does. People, conflict theory 101. Marx taught conflict theory, and just basically it's part of social work, by the way, education. The idea of when you have a group that has unequal power over another group, it always creates conflict. If it's an individual, think of the abuser and the victim in a domestic violence relationship. There's always conflict because there's an imbalance, right? The balance is off. And how do you prevent the violent response? You must take violence out of the system and do your best to make the grossly unequal system more balanced. When you do that, I mean, they've proven this. Researchers, societies that have the least amount of inequality, in other words, the most equality, are the least violent societies. Societies with the most inequality, in other words, the biggest gap between rich and poor, those societies have the highest rates of violent crime in the world, murder, things like that. And even in the United States, city by city, the cities that are more grossly unequal have higher amounts of violent crime. It is the single biggest correlate, inequality, imbalance of power, to violence. And again, I'm anti-violence. How do you prevent violence? You foster, and you want to see it in action, take a kindergarten class and give every half of them apples and cookies and give the other half, a stalk of celery, and see what happens in that class. They'll be like, why are they getting the cookies and the apples and the brownies and we're getting the salad? We don't want. I'm telling you, 5-year-olds know inequality. They've done experiments with monkeys, with horses, with dogs, where they have them do a task and they give good rewards to one and not the other, and the other one will freak out. This is human nature. We want fairness.
Yeah.
So I hear you, me, everyone on our side, we're fighting for fairness, and we keep warning them, you want to do this, it'll benefit everybody.
Well, it reminds me of the quote from JFK, who said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable." My thing is that this nation has started out with violence and has perpetuated that every single time. I just think about the Black Panther Party for self-defense. It's like when they started to protect their communities from racist white people or cops, and also they started a free breakfast program. They started free.
Yes, they did.
They started all these different things. The state saw that they were a threat to corporate power. And so in order to squash that, instead of going through peaceful means to say, hey, guys, maybe we just work with the corporations of the state. Instead of doing that, they sent the police after them. They sent violence after them.
Right. And infiltrators, too.
Yeah.
COINTELPRO sent infiltrators.
Yeah. And the revolutionaries end up having to defend themselves against. It reminds me of the March to Return in Gaza. Right? This was a peaceful March to Return.
Yes, it was.
Can actually get their homes back instead of settlers taking their homes away from them. And what did the IDF do? They shot at them. And so then it gets to a point where when peaceful means is no longer conducive or is exhausted, then what is the next step? And I think about what Kwame Ture said. He said that he agrees with Dr. King and his philosophy, but as far as strategy, he said he saw peaceful nonviolence as a strategy instead of a principle. Therefore, meaning that it's just like the guy said that I think violence is barbaric and stupid. And he asked the guy, well, if I'm a slave master and you're my slave, and the only way for you to get free is to kill me in order to free yourself, what are you going to do?
Right. And that's a legitimate question. I will, is it okay if I offer another perspective?
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't, I say this aware of my positionality in a place of privilege in this society.
Sure.
So I will say the disclaimer again. It is not my place, nor will I ever try to describe to an oppressed person, a non-white person specifically in this society, the means that they need to engage in to shake off their oppressor. It's not my place. That doesn't mean I can't also have an opinion on violence. So I'm against violence. I understand it. I will describe it. But I believe in confrontational, nonviolent civil disobedience. And there is some research behind, but these are good conversations for us to have. And I'm not disarming anybody. I'm just telling you my viewpoint, my perch, right? I'm one guy.
Sure.
And I think it does work. I don't think it's easy. I think the people who engaged in the Great March of Return, was that 2018 and 19? It spilled over. It went on for months and months and months.
I think it's 20.
How do you do that? How do you march? They had no weapons. And they marched, for those that don't know what it is, it was the people in Gaza who were fed up with a whole bunch. I mean, God, if you knew why they were so fed up in Gaza leading up until now, but the March of Great Return and before the war, like if you had cancer and you needed to go to a hospital and the hospital couldn't treat you in Gaza because it didn't have that specialty, Israel, like every year, let fewer and fewer people out to get medical treatment. I mean, just going through checkpoints in the West Bank to get 40 minutes away from your house took 4 hours, half a day, 9 hours, all this stuff, right? So they marched peacefully on the fence that cut off Gaza from southern Israel proper. And there were no weapons, and there were no rockets, and there was no guns, and they just shot these people. They shot kids who were just marching and walking and singing, shot them in the legs, made more like people unable to walk. I can't imagine. Like, how do you do that? How do you march up against the fence knowing they could blow my head off or my friend's head off or my brother's head off? They did it. But I do believe in nonviolence as a tactic. And I embrace it as a philosophy. Here's the thing. There's room for all of us to have these discussions. And I would never discount somebody saying, look, I can't see the world that way because of where I sit. And my thing is, I'm interested. I get it. I don't sit where you sit, but I can only practice what I practice. And no matter what, our commitment must always be to the same end, which is that society that is fair, that is equitable, and where everybody has the opportunity to have joy in their life. Like, shouldn't be such a struggle, right? We should be able to shake off this crazy. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but just these weird things like the concept of hardworking being a good thing. My friend is showing me, she's dealing with dating profiles, and she's trying to decide which is the better site. And she's getting these bizarre emails, like men just saying odd things right off the bat, and she's never spoken to them. But she's showing me here the profiles, and it's like all these guys are like, I'm hardworking and hard work. Like, what does that have to do with dating? We have this belief that you're supposed to exhaust yourself in order to look good to a mate or a potential friend. And we got to get rid of all this stuff. I want to get to that place. How we get there, we might disagree on the means, but we all get the ends. The ends is we need to live in we have to be able to imagine and live in that vision. I think there's room for all of us when it comes to transformational thought. I'm just I grew up in a house where and my dad was in the National Guard, right? But my mom made it clear pretty early on, no guns in our house. And again, I know I'm speaking from a place of privilege. I get that, but that was how I grew up, so I don't like them. That said, I listen and hear everybody's sides when it comes to this stuff. I just think we need to get to the place where we keep letting people know it doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to struggle. You don't have to choose between groceries and going to the dentist. You literally can have it all. We've got all the resources. And I don't know. I'm running out of steam a little bit. I didn't think we were going to talk for 3 hours. What do you think happened?
But this is really more of a nuanced, long-form conversation, and really ultimately, just talking about how we can't have nice things, and we have a system, we have political parties that are preventing that. You know, and we, you know, people like yourself and me, there are things that we can reach towards and that we are currently doing. You know, those of us at RBN, you know, we're doing mutual aid on the ground. We're trying to organize. We're trying to inform our communities. And in doing so, it means that we're going to encounter resistance from the powers that be. And so we're trying to do as much as we can without it being, I'm trying to choose my words carefully. We're trying to do it so that without being causing any harm to anybody. But at the same time, we also must be ready to defend ourselves. But at the same time, I think that as we're moving forward, I think more people are opening their eyes, which is what I am hopeful for. And they just need to know which direction to go in away from the fire. And this is what we're here for.
Yeah. And again, like, and why am I here? My message is, and it's going to be on repeat. I want to always remind us that we have to imagine what is the world we're hoping for and fighting for, and like what does it look like to live in that society? And if we are able to imagine it, envision it, we should be talking about it in groups too, not just individually. What is it that we wish for, that we hope for? Because here's the thing, and the power of that thought is unimaginably strong.
Mm-hmm.
And the words matter. Understand, if you want, you brought up the American Revolution as a good point. What did they do first? They wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing was a manifestation. That's what the Declaration of They weren't independent of Britain when they wrote it. England. By the way, why did the American colonies were like not the most important British colonies to the crown. You know, eventually we became more trouble than we were worth. They didn't like the idea of losing, but the bottom line was we weren't that consequential to them at the time. They didn't think of it that way. But how did it all go down? They wrote it down. They imagined it. They manifested it. I'm serious. The Declaration of Independence was written, granted, by slave owner. Like, I get that whole part. Like, it was all fucked up because of that. But they were able to do it, and they were able to vision, what does this society look like that we are imagining differently than the one we have? And we need to be able to do it. By the way, I don't have that answer. That is done in conversation with people sitting around with each other, those who, you know, having a beer or whatever you drink and just like hanging out and having a meal together and talking about what do we want? What do we vision? I saw that happen a little bit at Occupy Wall Street some years ago, where people did talk about it, and it kept up for a while. What does a society based on humanity, equality, and mutual respect, and racial justice as part of that, and gender justice and all that stuff, what does that look like? You know, and by the way, when we look at that, then the means to getting there in my brain have to match that.
Yeah.
We have to have our intentions. The intentions have to be consistent. Our actions have to match our intentions. And we've got to have this relentless feeling of compassion through it all. Like, what's his name? The Cuban revolutionary, Che Guevara. His whole thing was, you must be motivated by love, by compassion. It is the core. If it's not your motivation, if it's just power you want, you're just changing the look of who's going to be impressing people, right?
Basically, you know, and I think getting together with people and talking and breaking bread, that bread possibly being pizza, is one of the best ways in order for us to be able to commune and be able to get out like what we want for a future for ourselves. So
Where are you in Florida? You don't have to say. I don't know if you
Orlando.
say. You're in Orlando. Oh, okay. I have no plans, but next time I'm in Florida, you never know. I would. We should. It would be nice to meet up. But like, we've got to talk again. I keep going back. Like Occupy, I saw that happen a lot, and I saw these little pop-up Occupies happen in other places. People sitting around at the encampment at Columbia. So I went down there a bunch of times, and when I was there, just to see like what was going on, I saw students sitting in circles and talking to each other, having conversations. By the way, everybody didn't agree on everything, but I've seen this. I saw it with the movement for Black Lives that emerged out of first, the incidents of things like, Tamir Rice and Michael Brown and all, but then eventually with George Floyd. Saw people sitting in circles talking, having conversations. Not everybody agreed, but it was this somehow coming together. That's important, and I think that they don't like it when we communicate.
Yeah, this is why I encourage people to join organizations, especially for causes that we care about deeply. So then you can unite around a specific cause. And then you fight against the system by being with other people. And then we may grow from our understandings of each other just through being with each other. So I just think that, that's also a really good thing. And I co-sign on, communing with other people like that. So I appreciate it. I was not expecting this to go as long, but I think it was a much needed conversation. I think we both needed to get this out into the ether because it means that somebody who may not be where we are at on this mountain, they may be lower towards the base and they're just coming to where we're at. We could help them along by giving a little bit of rope. Right, to help them move a little bit more further forward. And so this is a conversation that I wanted to have with you because you have this mind that also thinks about the world in a cosmic whole, but also it means that we need to move together to have something better rather than do it individually. So that's another reason why I wanted to have you. And about the human mind, the human condition due to trauma and things like that, which also assists and aids in that understanding.
By the way, you do too. You're becoming quite a little expert yourself. I started watching, and I have to finish your thing on how inequality messes us up. And I saw the beginning of it. You were talking about racial inequality, and I was like, oh, wow. This is really cool. You had NIH stuff up there, so I'm looking forward to watching that whole thing. But yeah, this is always nice. I always like talking to you. Plus, I had nobody to talk to today or hang out with. It was sad. I needed a friend, so I was like, I'll talk to you because you're my friend, and then all of your audience could do that too. And by the way, I'm open to people who don't agree with some of the things I said. I get it. That's fine. We don't got to agree with everything. It's okay. Yeah. But a reminder, and I'm just going to say it again, to leftists who think it's okay to do, stop throwing the queer community under the bus. Stop beating up on trans people. If you don't understand them, try to talk to one. And if you don't know anybody to talk to, maybe just keep your mouth shut and talk about other stuff, like the fact that groceries are unaffordable, because that's what matters to people. So cut that other stuff out and let's come together, even if we don't agree on every little thing.
Yep.
My little statement.
Well, thank you so very much, Professor Anthony Zenkus. I just want to thank you for coming in, being very, very generous with your time and talking with me about this. This was a worthy topic because I think it ultimately means that we're moving forward together. So
we are.
Yeah.
And here's the amazing thing. It's been almost 3 hours. This is 20 ounces. So and it's tea. I went 3 hours. That's why we have to stop at this point, though. I'm just saying, this is a lot of tea in 3 hours. And it was such a compelling conversation. I didn't have to take a bathroom break once, but It's getting to be that time. It's getting crucial. But anyway, thanks for having me on. It's all right. Do we have to?
Yep, absolutely. So thank you very much, Professor Zenkus. You know, go to the commode and enjoy your relief.
It's going to be brief. I just, going to take care of that. And I got other stuff to do. Anyway, it was really great. Keep coming out with great content, and just let you know, when you talk about your struggles with health, you have a bunch of people out there, a lot of people out there that are sending out positive energy for you. You look fantastic. You have like a glowing kind of life force going on in you. And I know you're going to be well, and because you are filled with love and all of that stuff. So, just letting you know, we're all there for you. Those who pray, some send energy, some do both. But let's have let's thrive in 25. What do you say?
You get the last word.
There you go.
Professor Anthony Zenkus, thank you so very much for joining.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Love you all. Bye-bye. All right, folks. What did you think about the conversation? What did you think about what was said? What did you think? What is your opinions on the narrative that we had? What was your thoughts about the direction that we went? Because I think ultimately what it's about, I'm an idea person. And in my being an idea person, I think that it is important that, how can I put it? That we pursue the best ideas for the greatest amount of people. It's kind of like what Spock said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And we're trying to put forth ideas for the needs of the many that the many will consent to willingly and enthusiastically. Because ultimately, we don't want consent from people that are under duress, right? Because is that really consent? You want consent from the masses that's overwhelmingly zealous and positive and say, yes, we want that, right? And there's a lot of things that we can have. And I think that we can have nice things. Not only can we have nice things, but I'm going to put it in the same way my comrade Albizu from the real Orlando said it. You deserve nice things. You deserve it. You not only deserve housing, but you deserve high quality housing, and everybody deserves it. You deserve education. You deserve a doctorate degree without it being paywalled. Look, I'm gonna stand 10 toes down on this because I think education should be given freely. You deserve a doctorate education without it being paywalled. You deserve freedom of movement. You deserve the healthiest forms of food that could be produced by this planet. You deserve to have the best healthcare, the most innovative healthcare, without it being paywalled. Why? Just by virtue of you being a human being. Because if we think of ourselves as a cosmic whole, then that means if we paywall something, that means somebody gets left out. That means somebody dies. That means indirectly we're harming ourselves. I'm just going to say it. If you don't want the dominoes to fall, don't push that first domino. If you don't want them to fall, don't push the first one. and then think, oh, it's just 1. Oh, it's just 2. Oh, it's just 3. Oh, it's just 4. Because eventually that tumbling down will come to you. So with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you very much for everyone being so, for sticking with us and tuning in for this. I will be getting into some of the comments in the chat in a second. But first, before I do that, just a couple of things. One of the things I want to do is I want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. Because without you guys, I would not be able to do this type of work. And so I just want to give a big thank you and shout out. So here are the tiers. Thank you so very much to all the patrons on Patreon, the Jaybefaunt channel. The tiers are Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And I would love to get shout outs to brand new members, Kim Hayes and Ryan McHugh. Thank you so very much for becoming patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. And just to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you very much. Now, I will be showing super chats, but that's because they're looking at it from the RBN side. And so I'll be showing that from there. I personally am not monetized, so I don't get super chats on my channel. So that being said, I also want to put this out there as well. The information in regards to me trying to return the money that was donated to me from Spot Fund, so that for anybody who wants to, wants their money back, I'm going to read the email that Spot Fund gave directly to me, because since I got sick and I wasn't able to go to Seattle, I'm saying whoever wants their money back, I'm giving the money back. All right. So unfortunately, I can't return it to Spot Fund so it can be refunded back to you in that way. However, this is what they said to me, and I will be reading the email verbatim. This is from Spot Fund. Hi, James. You already withdrew all your money. So, yes, that's true. I cashed it out because I was about to use it for the trip. It says, I would suggest you work with your donor via Zelle or Venmo in order to return your funds. So, that's what they said. So, it may take some time, but if you actually want your money back, in my description of my video, and it's kind of hard for me because if you're anonymous, I can't tell who you are. But for the people who actually have their name that was listed, tell me your name that's on the video, and then your Zelle, and then I can give you back your money. Now, the only thing I'm worried about is that people may go, well, I'm going to look up the name, right? And I'm going to see somebody's name, and then I'm going to act like I'm that person. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about. But I do want to give people their money back for donating to something that didn't happen. So if possible, and some people who donate, I do know you. So just let me know if you want me to, I can Zelle it, I can Cash App it, I can Venmo it, and I can PayPal it back. So just let me know, because I want to make sure that if you feel that because I didn't go, that money should be returned, well, guess what? That's what I'm going to do. Because I don't want people to feel like, well, he didn't go, but why is he keeping it? I'm making this offer to give it all back. So that's why I want to make sure I didn't touch it. It's still there. It's just I have to do it individually instead of just canceling the Spot Fund, and then it just gets back to everybody. So unfortunately, but let me know. And my email's also in the description as well if you guys want to email me. So there's that. Now, let's go into the chats. I'm going to go and check in the Rumble side first to see if I have any Rumble rants. Looks like I'm good on the Rumble side, so we're good with that. Let me go into... I'm going to do the Super Chats first because I want to make sure I get to those. But then also other chats that I found interesting, or just people who, greeting me. We'll go over that as well. So let me make sure I go to the Super Chats. So first Super Chat we have is from Roger Meadows, says, Zinc, nice to meet last week. Today also check DM both of you. Okay, we will. So Roger Meadows got to meet Professor Zenkus during Sabby's birthday last week, which was great. So I think that was pretty awesome. And yeah. If Professor Zenkus ever makes his way down to Orlando, see, I want to find an independent pizza spot because I don't want to go to this. I don't want to go to the chain restaurants. I want to find a good pizza. I think I know of one, but because having a slice of pizza with somebody in conversation, it just works. Anyway, let's continue on. Thank you for this. Roger Meadows says, Rockfin is down. Hey, Zink, Chuck and Jeffries made New Yorkers look bad and outdone by another New Yorker. All eyes on New York with special elections. This is going to be interesting because there is a guy that's running, I think, as a Democratic Socialist, but I think he's running in the Democratic Party, unfortunately. But a lot of the policies that he's saying sounds really good. My thing is just and this is just my own personal hang up. If you're running in the Democratic Party, I'm gonna look at you sideways. That's just how it is. Because I honestly, unless you run as a Democrat and by the time you get in office, you change yourself to independent, that's the only other way I can see anything positive coming out of it. But if you're going to be tied to the Democratic Party, I don't have as much faith in you as other people do. I'm just being real. But thank you very much for that, Roger. Also for this, says Kathy Holchel, request of Jeffries won't hold special election to fill Stefanik's seat to keep GOP House control narrow. So thank you very much for that as well. Thank you very much to Chima Madhu, says, I may sound crazy for saying this, but I'm not fully convinced that Anthony Bourdain took his own life, considering everything he stood for. And this is one of the things that was conveyed to me by my boyfriend, was that Anthony Bourdain was really a man of the people. I didn't really know. Even though I went to culinary school, I love cooking, I love food. Look at me, I love food. But I really didn't pay much attention to Anthony Bourdain because I'm going to be real with you. All I saw in my head was just some rich white guy eating food in different countries. I was like, what's so interesting about that? But then once I started to hear his opinions, I was like, wait a minute. This dude sounds based. And when he said something to the effect that courage is created in Palestine, I said, oh, I know you got some people on your that hate you, that put you on their list. Because baby, I was just like, wow. And this was, after he died. But so when it comes to Anthony Bourdain, I didn't really know as much about him. And I feel bad that I didn't know the type of man he was before he died. So that's something I missed out on. But I'm glad that I know the type of guy he is so far. So thank you very much for that. Roger Meadows says, JB turned the zinc on to Seth at Taxpayers Against Genocide to tell students at Columbia University. Okay. Thank you very much. I will let him know about that. Let's go to some of the other chats. All right, saying hello to Daryl. Good to see you. Crom coming in saying, peace, JB. Kate Max says, got to tell you, JB, you look like $1 million at the RBN round table the other day. Now you're the best dressed man on the whole internet. Oh, you humble me, Kate Max. You humble me way too much. Thank you so very much. Kevin says, how do we get a real third? You mean a real third party? Here's the thing. I look at third parties as a messaging tool primarily because the system won't ever really truly allow a real viable third party to actually attain any power that threatens the power of the system. They may allow a third party that doesn't threaten the system, but anyone that really truly threatens the power of the system, they will allow it to happen. But third parties are great vehicles for messaging to let the working people know we can have nice things. And then that person will run and it'll give more attention. And then they will be looking at the Republican and Democratic parties and going, wait, they're saying we can actually do this. Why can't we do that? Like bringing up the fact that under Section 1881A of the Social Security Act, that we can actually have universal health care in an emergency situation. And all through 2020, we didn't enact that law, that policy. But we could have. We could have did so many things. So many things. But they didn't want to do it. And that's the issue, right? Because there's a lot that they can do, but they don't want to do it because therefore it would mean an equalizing taking place, equity taking place. And that's the problem with the system. Thank you very much for that, Kevin. Shout out in love to John Kemper, a.k.a. Blue Marble, a.k.a. Adam Bashir. Coming in hot. We have Charles J coming in saying hi. Good to see you, Charles J. Sean Miller says, what's that? Is that a salute? Well, salute to you, Sean Miller. All right. Super Seamer. Oh, gosh. Tongue twister. Super Seamster Sewing Show says Bakersfield, California. Are you out in Bakersfield? Thank you very much for letting me know. If you guys want to put your locations or the cities that you're from, let me know. Or just if you're just from outside of the United States, let me know. I don't care if it's Canada, Mexico, it could be Panama, it could be Tunisia, it could be Mauritania. It can be, Laos, right? Let me know. Tyler Russ says Worcester, Massachusetts. Thank you very much. Is that where they make Worcestershire sauce? Sorry, that was corny. Let me see. Nitro Ductro says I like like you were basically saying how they are just performative like in the Hunger Games. Yeah. Ani Shah says hello JB and RBN fam. Looking nice JB. Thank you so very much. Sophie and Tass, hello JB and RBN. Good to see you. Javier says good afternoon everyone. Amanda Brinkley coming in saying the performance of care, we should call them the performance of care Democrats from here on out. Yeah, so it's like if I have a sprained leg and you're acting like you're wrapping it up, but you're not actually wrapping it up, then are you actually helping me? Because I need you to actually get in there and help me wrap my leg. But you're not actually doing the action. So this is the same thing when it comes to the Democrats. Thank you very much for that. Bobby coming in saying, Palestine, one country called. Yeah. Love for Palestine. Let me see. The Wook Report says, James, I don't know if I can say that, but I want to see you on Brown and Joy Gray show, on Katie Halper's show. I love my comrades at RBN, and they are gracious enough to have me. I think it's a privilege to be among them. And so I just appreciate their camaraderie, solidarity, and love. And so I feel like being on RBN is actually a privilege for me. It says, I want to see you on Breonna Joy Gray show. I actually did an episode on Breonna Joy Gray's Bad Faith. It was actually the episode about leftist dating, but I would love to do more shows with Breonna Joy Gray. She's doing really great work, especially in left independent media. And there's not a lot of Black people in left independent media. And so I want to give more support to people like that. Also, there's not a lot of women in left independent media. And so I would like to also, have more conversations with women too. I'm trying to do that more on my channel here. Katie Halper is really cool. We've DM'd each other a few times. I would like to have her on here as well. And I would like to have Brown Joy Gray back on as well, in order to be able to just have these conversations, because I think they're much needed. They are brilliant women, not just brilliant women, just brilliant people in general, and offer perspectives in ways that maybe I just didn't figure out yet. And so I like to talk to people who elevate the conversation, like people who, like Professor Zenkus, who elevates the conversation. We may not agree on everything, and on this channel, I also want to say this, is that I'm going to have on more people who I may not agree with everything on, because I don't want my channel to be an echo chamber. Because once you start becoming an echo chamber and you start smelling yourself, then all you do is smell yourself. And you don't realize when you actually stink. So this is why I think it's important to have these conversations. More of these conversations, including with people who you may have some disagreement with. So I'm going to try to be reaching out to people who I may not agree with on everything. But we'll see what conclusions we can come to. And I'm not a debater. Let's make that abundantly clear. I don't like debating. I just want to have conversations. Should I say this? Okay, whatever. Hell, it's Christmas. I want to be the Fred Rogers of the left. I want to be the LeVar Burton of the left. I want to be the Bob Ross of the left. That's what I want to be. I want to, number one, bring people together. Number two, I want to let you know that you matter. And that you are part of this precious whole of humanity. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm trying to do. Because if you care about justice and compassion and love and things like that, I love you for just who you are. Anyway, that's me. Javier says, when you have no policy at all you have left is performance. Absolutely. And that's the problem. Look at what Kamala Harris did during her run for president in 2024. How many weeks? Roger, I think you might still be in the chat. How many weeks or how many days did we go without Kamala Harris actually having a policy platform on her website? Performance. And yes, Jessica says style over substance. And that's, the point of the Democratic Party. Johnny Boy says he means the cages that Obama set up that Trump inherited. Yeah, but the thing is that Trump still used them. And the thing is like they both deserve our ire because of one of building the cages and the other one of using them in order to toss a desperate people into. And we wouldn't have these people as desperate in our country if we weren't doing all this destabilization. But some people don't want to hear it. Johnny Boy says now those white people who took the knee were only doing it for show. If you can't win, if you're white, you will always be branded supremacist, even though your ancestors fought to free slaves. Okay, let's unpack this. I'm going to be very blunt here. I may get some hate for it. It is what it is. Like it or love it, I'm going to tell the truth. If you are a white person in this country, and if all you do is shit that's performative, but you aren't doing the same thing that your ancestors did when it came to actually freeing the slaves. You're not having that same energy. You're just performing. Then yes, you are doing it for show. Yes, because taking a knee don't do shit, especially if you have privilege. And you can use that privilege in order to make it so that everybody has equity and equality. Are you speaking out and being anti-racist, anti-colonialist, anti-xenophobic, anti-misogynist, whatever, against the marginalized people? Are you actually speaking out when none of the marginalized people are around and they can't hear you or see you? What are you doing? What are you doing if somebody uses an F slur near you, who's supposedly your friend or a member of a group that you're part of, but you stand by and allow them to use it and you don't check them? What are you doing? You can't win if you're white. The thing is that the point is not to win. The point is liberation. The point is liberation. Like, win? This isn't the contest. We just want to be held up to the same level as you. We just want to have the same deference as you, the same consideration as you. That's all. There's no winning. And you will always be branded as supremacist, even though your ancestors fought to free the slaves. Here's the thing. Your ancestors fought to free the slaves, so we know they're not supremacists. But what about you? What have you done? Because your actions, the actions of your ancestors, don't mean that you did those actions. So therefore, why are you going to say, well, my ancestors fought to free the slaves, but then you're not doing anything to further the cause that your ancestors did in the first place? So no, I'm not going to take the performance. Like my comrade Nick on RBN says, fuck your unity, I want solidarity. Do you have solidarity with me? Are you going to stand with me, even if it does not benefit you? I have solidarity with people who I don't identify with, but they are marginalized. And even if they get a win, great. I have solidarity with them. Like, for instance, Black people in this country who are not descendants of the enslaved of the United States. So that people from the Caribbean, people from African countries, Afro-Latinos, people like that, right? I will stand with them when they fight in CARICOM to get reparations from the countries in which have enslaved their ancestors. I stand with them, even though I would never get reparations from France. I will never get reparations from Spain. I will never get reparations from Portugal, right? Now, I could possibly get reparations from England if we go back far enough, but that's a whole nother story. But I stand with them. I stand with our trans siblings. Even though I'm not, I'm going to stand with them. Because their lives matter too. But at the same time, I'm also going to stand with my own people as well. Because I can do both. But the thing is, it's like, what are you doing in order to help facilitate a change so that everyone could benefit? That's the question. Bubblegum Blast says, JB, you're an oh, thank you very much. That's very sweet of you. Eric T. Red. All right, my homie says, reform the Democratic Party. LOL. That's a good one. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like Shama Sawant said, the Democratic Party is a road, is basically a graveyard. Zoya, beautiful helper, and person in the background at RBN, thank you so very much, says, my favorite bathroom sign in New Mexico had a man, woman, wheelchair, and alien logo that said, whatever, just wash your hands. That's where we need to be. Don't need to agree to organize against elites. Yeah, wash your hands. You know what I'm saying? Keep these infections down. Willem said, don't forget the electricity for the cars mostly comes from petroleum or coal. Yes, absolutely. And this is another thing that we don't talk about, is that innovation would mean that we possibly could still have nuclear power plants that are powered by thorium instead of uranium. But are we really doing the research for that? Well, the research will be done by public dollars in our universities in order to be able to research so that we know whether it or not it could be harmful to our society. But as you know, the United States government is doing right now through DOGE, they're taking money away from colleges for, you know, vital research. So therefore, we will probably never be able to research that now with these governments, because all the innovation that ever happens really in this country, for the most part, is through public dollars. Roger says, short lifespan of products have a negative impact on the environment because it fills landfills faster, but built to last, positive impact on the environment. Yep, absolutely. Plant obsolescence is actually very anti-human because we need things that are going to last. All right, so I am way over. Oh wait, this is another. I missed the super chat. Hang on. Yeah, I missed this one. I'm sorry. Quintessential says, wish one day a video with Zenkus, Gabor, Mate, etc. How leftism affects your clinical therapy because it must. Some suffering is because the world is F up. Now, I actually talked about class and mental health on Tuesday. Now, the clip is already out, so if you guys want to talk about it. But I actually talked about the intersection of class and mental health, and I actually played a TED Talk from Professor Anthony Zenkus in there as well. And I think that is really a worthy conversation, especially with people who are social workers, counselors, psychologists, people who deal with human beings on, you know, a mental level, and, you know, an emotional level on a consistent basis, because, you know, we're typically taught within this capitalist system to deal with capitalism and to I don't want to say desensitize, but it's more to just be used to the injustices and inconsistencies within this system. But in reality, it's like, well, if all my material conditions were met, then like 90% of all the stuff that I'm dealing with right now wouldn't even exist. A lot of people don't talk about that too. Oh, Anna says it's pronounced Wooster. Sorry. I'm not from oh my goodness. I'm not from Boston. Look, Zoya, don't put me on blast. I'm on dialysis, baby. I'm great for car trips. Let me just tell you that way. Let me see. Yeah, Joe Anthony says, once upon a time, even Republicans admitted we needed common sense regulation in some areas. Nixon did the EPA. Those days are gone now. Yep, I agree. And that's one of the biggest faults of the system. All right, so I'm going to head on out because I am way over time. But I think this is a really worthy conversation to have. And I thank you guys for tuning in. Oh, we got one more. Thank you to Chima Madu says they are trying to make the U.S. more like Nigeria, where healthcare, education, electricity, water, road work, and even waste management are privatized. Yeah, that's not really going to work, because the thing is that you're going to have a whole lot more dead people if you do it that way. Because once you start to paywall essential services that are necessities for human life, then you're going to be condemning some people to die because you feel that some lives, human lives, are worth less than others. That's psychotic. But that's how capitalism works. Some people feel like their lives are worth more simply because of the pedigree that they are. Anyways. So guys, thank you so very much. And this okay, so tomorrow I will not be on RBN because I will be helping out with Real Orlando doing mutual aid. They're doing their Solidarity Hub tomorrow, so I'll be trying to do that. I'm gonna have to do light work because I got this catheter, so I can't sweat, and it's a whole thing. But I'm gonna do what I can to assist my comrades out there who are doing work on the ground out in these streets. So I'm gonna try to take some video a little bit, but I want to also be respectful of the attendees that we are serving, because some people may not consent to being on video, but I'll mostly be showing the things that are being done, and anybody who's part of the organization that is okay with being on camera. So we'll be doing that. So I can't wait for that tomorrow, because I missed out on the last 2 Solidarity Hubs because each time I was in a hospital. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be doing news stories. Yeah, on Tuesday I'll be doing a news story. One of them, let me see, where is it? Yeah. One of the segments is going to be about defense contractors. So we're going to be talking about defense. So if you guys want to tune into that, you guys can always go, to my channel. And then I will also be trying to get out the next reading of the next books. So I read books on my channel, if you guys didn't know, and then I discuss them. So the last reading I did was Presidential, Black America and the Presidents by Margaret Kimberly. I know it's kind of bright, but I read that. I also read Of Water in the Spirit, Ritual, Magic, and the Initiation in the Life of an African Shaman by Melodoma Patrice Some. So I think this might be in that. No. This is the second. And also I have been reading The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks on my channel, and discussing the intersections of capitalism and patriarchy. So this has been, very awakening. And of course, there's other readings that I've done on my channel. If you guys want to, you guys can go to a playlist for that. Like Asada Shakur. I don't know if I still have access to my Rockfin channel anymore, but I did Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. I did Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. I even had Dr. Devon Price on. And I did Dirty Juice by Michael Parenti as well. I may have done another book or two, but I can't remember. But I also do that as well. So if you guys want to tune in to the readings, you guys can tune into my channel. And I appreciate it. So with that being said, thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. I just want to thank you guys for, being so gracious with your time. I should do a closing video, because I think it's really important that we can put things into context. And kind of, wrap tight with a bow. You know what? I'm gonna do this one about mutual aid idea, because when we talk about all the problems, let's put forth a solution. So I'm gonna put forth this video as a solution, so that people can see, this is a great idea in order to build up, working class solidarity. All right. So let me make sure I get it set up. Okay, so let me share this. Hold on, take that down. Let me share my screen in a second. But water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Or watch something funny because joy is revolutionary, or read because reading is fundamental. And always, always focus on uniting with people who are workers, even if they are part of the marginalized group, and even if you don't understand them, they're still your fellow workers. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. I love you guys all for watching. Mwah, forehead kisses. And let's head on out. So take a look at this video. I think you guys will enjoy.
I'm going to show you the most basic thing that I can think to do to keep some of the money in my community. Check this out. I'm literally standing on thousands of dollars of my community's money. It's just an empty spot on my driveway. So anyone in Davis County, Utah that has a vehicle, listen up. Every couple of months, you've got to get an oil change done on your car, but you probably don't have the shit to do that. This is stuff that's just sitting in my garage. It's costing me absolutely no money to hold. And if you wanted to use it, this is going to cut your oil change down to a third of the costs just by learning how to do it and being able to use the tools in order to get it done. Not enough money? How about that battery? That's a big $10, $15, $20 upcharge to just scrub some of the corrosion off. Also, if you need a tire rotate or just to fill them up, don't pay a machine. This air is absolutely free. These simple tools can save people hundreds of dollars every time they need to get their car serviced. Now let's just do some simple math. Let's say that I help 1,000 new friends by using my tools in a spot on my driveway to service their cars. If each one of them saved about $100, I kept $100,000 in my community. If 9 other people in my community had the same tools in their garage and did the same thing, we would be keeping $1 million in our community over the course of a year, just by working together. We're going to eat the rich one bite at a time. We can do it. Much love and respect to everyone out there.
Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.